Chapter 4497. Are you kidding me? Yu Yu died just like that. Qi Lin stared blankly at the sky. The ashes that Yu Yu had turned into scattered down from above. Her mouth was wide open. Not only Qi Lin, but everyone from the Qi Huan clan was completely stunned. They looked at the scene in disbelief. Yu Q, who had suppressed the entire Qi Huan clan to the point of being unable to breathe, was actually killed in an instant. This was simply too inconceivable. In a ruin, Qi Haozhan struggled to stand up with the help of two clansmen. Where's Yu Yu? Qi Haozhan looked around and did not see Yu Yu. He could not help but ask in surprise. Clan leader, Yu Yu is dead. The two clansmen answered bitterly. Dead? How is that possible? That's an early cosmic Dharma powerhouse. Who in our Qi Huan clan can kill him? Qi Haozhan was stunned at first, then he said angrily. He felt that the two clansmen were lying to him and was a little angry. Clan leader, it's true. It's that demonic cultivator who killed him. The two clansmen quickly pointed at Zhuowen's back and said to Qi Haozhan. Clan leader is really amazing. He actually made such a powerful demonic cultivator as a friend. It seems that clan leader has already seen through Yu Yu's trick and is prepared. He's indeed our clan leader. He's really smart and extraordinary. Many of the elites of the Qi Huan clan did not dare to get close to Zhuowen. They all came to Qi Haozhan's side and complimented him. In their opinion, since this mysterious demonic cultivator could appear at the banquet, he must have been invited by Qi Haozhan. This person was more or less related to Qi Haozhan. Qi Haozhan was dumbfounded. From everyone's words, he had already confirmed that Yu Yu was really dead. Thinking of this, Qi Haozhan's gaze fell on the demonic cultivator beside Qi Lin and he frowned slightly. He did not know this person at all. Moreover, he did not remember having any demonic cultivator friends. Then, how did this person enter his banquet? Brother, you are? Although Qi Haozhan had a lot of thoughts, he did not dare to be negligent. He quickly walked forward and asked Zhuowen politely. Although he didn't know this person, he didn't know what the former's motive was. But since this person had the strength to kill Yu Yu, then he was absolutely not someone their Qi Huan clan could contend against. He naturally had to be cautious. Zhuowen glanced at Qi Haozhan indifferently and said, Zhuowen. Qi Haozhan was stunned. He felt that this name was very familiar. It seemed that Zhuowen's father also had this name. Qi Lin first bowed to Zhuowen, then came to Qi Haozhan's side and said, Father, this senior is Junan's father. He was the one who killed Yu Wuhui and Yu Q. Qi Haozhan's eyes widened. His gaze toward Zhuowen was filled with respect and fear. At the same time, Qi Haozhan was also shocked by how powerful Zhuowen's father was. To instantly kill Imperfect Moon, who was in the early Cosmic Dharma phase, one would need to be at least in the late Cosmic Dharma phase. But he remembered that Zhuowen had said that his father, Zhuowen, had not been in the 100 domains for more than 1,000 years. To be able to possess such strength in such a short period of time, his talent was a little too terrifying. Haozhan greets Senior Zhuo. Thank you for your generosity, Senior Zhuo, for saving our Qi Huan clan from disaster. Qi Haozhan bowed solemnly to Zhuowen, his eyes filled with respect and gratitude. He knew very well that if Zhuowen hadn't helped, their Qi Huan clan would have been wiped out, and the Qi Huan realm would have been taken away by the Burning Moon realm. Although he was much older than Zhuowen, in the 100 outer realms, strength was revered. Whoever was stronger would naturally be the senior. Zhuowen waved his hand and said indifferently, It's just a small matter. It's not worth mentioning. A small matter. Qi Haozhan laughed bitterly in his heart. Zhuowen's small matter was a matter of life and death to him. At the same time, the elites of the Burning Moon clan that Yu Yu had brought were all scared out of their wits when they saw Yu Yu being instantly killed. They all fled outside. But the elites of the Qi Huan clan did not dare to stop them. Although Yu Yu had fallen, the elites that Yu Yu had brought were all very strong. They might not be a match for them. If they rashly tried to stop them now, it was very likely that they would face the fiercest resistance. Huangju, Chirue, kill them all. Zhuoan looked indifferently at the fleeing elites of the Burning Moon clan and said slowly. Two respectful voices came from the void. Then, two terrifying auras suddenly burst out. In an instant, everyone in the Qi Huan clan was affected. Many weak cultivators involuntarily knelt on the ground. Then, they all saw a burst of bright starlight above the void. It was as if an endless meteor shower had appeared in the sky in an instant. When the starlight faded, the elites of the Burning Moon clan were all annihilated. Not even dregs were left. That's the divine power of the Ni ancient star. The moment Qi Haozhan saw the starlight in the sky, he immediately thought of something and his body trembled. He knew very well that the divine power of the Ni ancient star was a divine power that only the elites of the Ni ancient star possess. This meant that the two people who attacked just now were elites of the Ni ancient star cultivation. To Qi Haozhan, an existence with such a cultivation level was like a high and mighty god that was unreachable. Whoosh whoosh. In the blink of an eye, that terrifying aura disappeared. Then, two sounds of wind breaking sounded and landed in front of Zhuoan. A man and a woman with an extraordinary aura knelt in front of Zhuoan on one knee and said respectfully, "Master. According to your orders, none of them were left alive." "Master." Qi Haozhan and Qi Lin's expressions stiffened. They turned their heads with difficulty to look at the young man in front of them. These two powerful beings of the Ni ancient star cultivation actually called the young man in front of them their master. At this moment, Qi Haozhan and Qi Lin were completely shocked. They were well aware of what this meant. Zhuoan, Zhuojunan's father, was far more powerful than they had imagined. Not bad. Zhuoan nodded indifferently. Then, he turned to look at Qi Lin and said, "You're called Qi Lin, right?" Qi Lin hurriedly responded. She was so nervous that her heart was beating very fast. The person in front of her was a big shot that even the elites of the Ni ancient star cultivation had to bow down to. How could she remain calm in the face of such an existence? "You did well just now. Let me ask you, where was Junan sent to?" Zhuoan looked Qi Lin up and down and secretly nodded in his heart. Although Qi Lin was not extremely beautiful, he could see that the former was indeed a kind-hearted girl. She did not pretend at all. This could be seen from the life and death crisis just now when Zhuojunan fled first. Qi Lin hurriedly said, "Senior, that transmission talisman is random. I don't know the specific location. However, the longest transmission distance is 5 trillion kilometers. I think it's still in the Qi Huan region." Zhuoan nodded and said to Huang Ju, "Go, find Junan for me." "Yes." Huang Ju took the order and left. Chapter 4498. Do you know that Junan likes you? Zhuoan looked at Qi Lin and asked with a faint smile. Hearing this, Qi Lin blushed and nodded slightly. Zhuoan smiled and said, "In order to repay your kindness to my son, I'll give you the Burning Moon realm, okay?" Qi Lin was stunned. She didn't expect that Zhuoan would give her the Burning Moon realm. That was a powerful low-level realm that was infinitely close to a mid-level realm. This gift is too valuable. Qi Lin was a little flustered and at a loss. "Haha, accept it. I, Zhuoan, have always repaid kindness with kindness, and revenge with revenge. Since you've done Junan a favor, then as his father, I must repay it." Zhuoan smiled and then said to Qi Rui, "Go to the Burning Moon realm. I order you to completely control the Burning Moon clan within 3 days. Don't worry, Master. Qi Rui will definitely complete it." Qi Rui revealed a charming smile. Her charm was soul-stirring, and many male cultivators of the Qi Huan clan were mesmerized. Zhuowan's eyes were calm, and his emotions didn't fluctuate at all. Qi Lin watched Qi Rui disappear before her eyes. She knew that even if she refused, Zhuowan would still give her the Burning Moon realm. She might as well accept it openly. Next, Zhuowan was invited by Qi Haozhan to another hall. In order to thank Zhuowan for saving his life, Qi Haozhan treated him with great hospitality. In the northwest region of the Qi Huan realm, in a huge swamp surrounded by purple mist, a figure fell into this place in a sorry state. This was a handsome young man. At this moment, his fists were tightly clenched, and his eyes were filled with grief and indignation. He was Zhuo Jun'an, who was sent away by the teleportation talisman. Damn it! I must hurry back. Zhuo Jun'an suddenly punched the ground, his eyes filled with unwillingness. However, he quickly regained his composure. He chose a direction and used his movement technique to rush over. After a while, Zhuo Jun'an stopped. He found that he had returned to the swamp just now. What's going on? I'm back to where I started. Zhuo Jun'an's expression was ugly. He looked around and found that the surroundings were exactly the same as where he had landed. In other words, after running for so long, he was actually coming back. There's something strange about this swamp. I'm afraid there's some kind of natural illusion array here. Zhuo Jun'an frowned slightly. He immediately thought of the strangeness of the swamp, and his expression turned ugly. His father was a powerful array Dao master, so he naturally had access to a lot of array Dao knowledge. It was just that he wasn't interested in the Dao of arrays. Therefore, he only dabbled a little. Although he could see that there was a natural illusory array in the swamp, he was at his wits' end when it came to breaking the array. Damn it! Qi Lin and the Qi Huan clan are now in deep water and fire. How can I waste time here? The veins on Zhuo Jun'an's forehead bulged. His heart was filled with unwillingness. Zhuo Jun'an continued to run through the swamp, but what made him feel helpless was that he kept returning to the same spot. But Zhuo Jun'an. Suddenly, a sound exploded in the sky above the swamp, and it resounded ceaselessly like rolling thunder. An unimaginably terrifying aura suddenly swept through the entire swamp. The strange purple fog around the swamp suddenly dissipated because of this pressure, and the surrounding field of vision became much more spacious. Zhuo Jun'an raised his head with great difficulty. He was shocked to discover that there was an imposing figure hovering above him. Just by hovering there, this person caused Zhuo Jun'an to tremble with fear. So powerful. This aura is much stronger than Yu Yu's. Zhuo Jun'an's pupils shrank to the size of needles. A strong sense of helplessness rose in his heart. Facing this person made him feel even more powerless than facing Yu Yu. Is he from the Burning Moon clan? No, this person is definitely stronger than Yu Yu. He can't be from the Burning Moon clan. Then who could he be? Although Zhuo Jun'an's body was stiff, his mind was extremely calm. He was quickly thinking of a way to escape. However, he quickly realized that no matter what plan he came up with, it was completely useless against the person in front of him. The middle-aged man hovering in the air looked down at Zhuo Jun'an. Then, he slowly landed in front of Zhuo Jun'an. Zhuo Jun'an wanted to escape, but his body wouldn't listen to him. He was completely immobilized by the middle-aged man's aura. Then, Zhuo Jun'an shockingly discovered that the middle-aged man with the terrifying aura before him was kneeling on one knee in front of him. This subordinate is Huang Ju. Greetings, young master. The middle-aged man lowered his head slightly as he spoke respectfully. Zhuo Jun'an was completely stunned. He looked at the kneeling middle-aged man with a puzzled gaze. This person was even stronger than Yu Yu, but such an expert was kneeling in front of him and calling him young master. Was there a mistake? Zhuo Jun'an was stunned in place. He didn't speak for a long time. Huang Ju was also kneeling on the ground. He didn't speak either. The atmosphere between the two became abnormally awkward. After confirming that Huang Ju didn't have any ill intentions, Zhuo Jun'an asked tentatively, "May I ask if you've mistaken me for someone else? I don't even know you. You're Zhuo Jun'an. Then there's no mistake. You're my young master. Young master, you might not know this, but my master is Zhuoan. He's your father." Huang Ju quickly said. What? Father? Zhuo Jun'an was stunned at first. Then, his eyes were filled with excitement. At the same time, his heart was filled with suspicion. Although he had always worshipped Zhuo Wen and believed that Zhuo Wen would be able to achieve great things after entering the 100 Outer Realms, he had never seen Zhuo Wen before. But this time was too short. How could he already have such a terrifying expert as Huang Ju as his subordinate? Oh right. Where is my father now? Also, the Qi Huan clan is in trouble. I have to go back and beg them. Can you go back with me? Zhuo Jun'an blurted out all the questions in his heart. His face was filled with anxiety. Young master, don't worry. The problem with the Chi Huan clan has been solved by my master. I was sent by my master to look for you, Huang Ju said softly. Hearing this, Zhuo Jun'an was stunned at first. Then, he heaved a sigh of relief. Now, Zhuo Jun'an could vaguely guess that Zhuoan was very powerful. With his help, the Chi Huan clan should be able to survive. I wonder how Qi Lin is doing. Zhuo Jun'an thought of Qi Lin's heroic figure before he left, and a wave of worry rose in his heart. Young master, don't worry. The woman you care about has been saved by my master. She's safe and sound. Huang Ju seemed to have seen through Zhuo Jun'an's thoughts and said calmly. Zhuo Jun'an's body trembled slightly. Then, he clenched his fists tightly and finally heaved a sigh of relief. Thank you. Zhuo Jun'an looked at Huang Ju and smiled. Huang Ju was stunned. His face suddenly became unnatural. He turned his head and said in a low voice, working for my master and young master is my duty as a servant. But I still have to thank you. Zhuo Jun'an smiled brightly. Huang Ju looked deeply at Zhuo Jun'an. There was a trace of complexity in his eyes. Young master, it's time for us to go. Master has been looking for you. He's been worried about you, Huang Ju said softly. Okay. Zhuo Jun'an nodded. Under Huang Ju's escort, they successfully left the swamp and headed towards the Chi Huan Holy City. Chapter 4499. In the main hall of the inner city of Chi Huan Holy City. Under Qi Haozhon's insistence, Zhuoan had no choice but to sit on the main seat and accept the worship of the people of Chi Huan clan. Zhuoan also knew that Qi Haozhon was expressing his gratitude, so he did not reject it too much. After chatting for a while, Qi Haozhon heaved a sigh of relief. He had a rough understanding of Zhuoan and knew that he was not an arrogant person. Clan leader, Zhuo Jun'an is back. Outside the main hall, a subordinate rushed in and knelt on the ground to report. Jun'an is back. Let him in, Qi Haozhon quickly said. Zhuoan, who was sitting on the main seat, had a sharp look in his eyes. Qi Lin, who was not far away, had a strange look in her beautiful eyes. Yes. The subordinate took the order and left. After a while, he brought Huang Ju and Zhuo Jun'an into the main hall. When Zhuo Jun'an entered the main hall, the first thing he saw was Qi Lin. He heaved a sigh of relief. Huang Ju did not lie to him. Qi Lin was indeed fine. Jun'an greets the clan leader. Zhuo Jun'an first saluted Qi Haozhon before his gaze fell on the tall figure sitting on the main seat. In an instant, the father and son looked at each other. A sense of excitement rose in their hearts as they reunited after a long separation. Father. Zhuo Jun'an's lips moved. After a while, he finally called out the name that he had not used for a long time. Zhuoan stood up and walked down from the main seat until he was in front of Zhuo Jun'an. Jun'an, long time no see. You've grown up and become much stronger, haha. Zhuoan laughed and hugged Zhuo Jun'an tightly. Although the father and son did not speak much, they knew that the feelings between them were unspoken. Father, thank you. Zhuo Jun'an hugged Zhuoan and whispered to Zhuoan. Zhuoan's lips curled up. He knew why Zhuo Jun'an was thanking him. Kid, I'm your father after all. If I don't help you, who will? Right, Qi Lin, this little girl is not bad. You can't let her down, Zhuoan said in a low voice before winking at Zhuo Jun'an. Zhuo Jun'an's face flushed red as he stammered, Father, it's not what you think. Right. It's not what I think. Anyway, I'll support you no matter what you do. I'll be your most solid backing, Zhuoan said with a smile. Yes. Zhuo Jun'an nodded heavily, looking at Zhuoan with eyes full of admiration and gratitude. Jun'an, it's great that you're fine. Qi Haozhon brought Qi Lin forward as he spoke with a kind gaze. Actually, it's all thanks to Qi Lin. If it wasn't for her risking her life to save me, I'm afraid I would really be in danger. This is all thanks to Qi Lin. Zhuo Jun'an scratched his head. Although Qi Lin didn't say anything, her beautiful eyes glanced at Zhuo Jun'an from time to time, her cheeks blushing. Qi Haozhon was an astute person. Naturally, he could see that there was something going on between Zhuo Jun'an and Qi Lin. It seemed that something had happened between the two of them when they fought side by side in the battle with Yu Wuhui. When he thought of this, Qi Haozhong was overjoyed. He had always thought highly of Zhuo Junan. Now, Zhuo Junan was Zhuowen's son. He had a bright future and a strong background. If Zhuo Junan and Qi Lin could be together, Qi Haozhong would definitely approve of it. After the matter of the Burning Moon realm came to an end, Zhuowen temporarily stayed in Qi Huan Divine City for a while. 3 days later, Qi Rui returned and took complete control of the Burning Moon realm. When Zhuowen handed over the control of the Burning Moon realm to Qi Lin and Qi Haozhong turned pale with fright. It was as if they were in a dream. They didn't think that they would take over the Burning Moon realm so easily. Later, when Qi Haozhong heard the names of Huang Ju and Qi Rui, he finally understood. This was because he had heard of these two people before. They were both supreme experts of a higher realm. It was no wonder that they could take over the Burning Moon realm so easily. Zhuo Junan also learned from Zhuowen that the Riker had arrived in the 100 Outer Realms. He also learned that Zhuowen had established his own force in the 100 Outer Realms. Zhuowen's force was called the Kanglan Realm. It was a new realm that gathered all the higher realms and was infinitely close to becoming a supreme realm. Junan, I need to hurry back. The Kanglan Realm is still in its infancy. There are still many things that I need to take care of. Zhuowen stood by the window of the palace with his hands behind his back. He looked at the sky outside the window. Zhuo Junan stood behind Zhuowen and said, "Father, are you leaving so soon? Come with me to the Kanglan Realm. Go see your mother, grandfather, grandmother, and the others. Also, if you like Qi Lin, I can propose marriage to Qi Huan Realm in the name of the Kanglan Realm. I don't think Qi Haozhong will refuse." Zhuowen turned around and looked at his son who was about the same height as him. His expression was peaceful. Zhuo Junan frowned slightly. After a moment of hesitation, he shook his head and said, "Father, I won't go back for the time being. I will take care of the matter between Qi Lin and myself." "Why?" Zhuowen asked with a frown. Zhuo Junan clenched his fists and a ray of hope flashed in his eyes. He said, "Of course it's because I admire you. Father, since you entered the 100 Outer Realms alone and went from having nothing to becoming an existence that even the supreme race of a higher realm has to bow down to you, you are truly amazing. You're really amazing. You've always been my goal. Therefore, in order to be on the same level as you, I don't want to be under your protection. I want to rely on my own strength to gain a foothold in the 100 Outer Realms and eventually catch up to your footstep." Zhuowen was stunned. He looked at the energetic young man in front of him with a complicated gaze. At this moment, Zhuowen saw a shadow of himself in Zhuo Junan. Zhuowen's lips curled into a smile. His smile grew wider and wider until he finally burst into laughter. He patted Zhuo Junan's shoulder heavily and said, "As expected of my son. I am very happy that you have such aspirations. I look forward to the day you can catch up to me. Since you have made this decision, I will not force you. Before I leave, I want to give you something." As he spoke, Zhuowen pointed 2 fingers at Zhuo Junan's forehead. In an instant, a vast and complicated information swept through Zhuo Junan's mind. He couldn't help but clutch his head and groan in pain. "Junan, this is the most precious gift I can give you. Accept my inheritance. If you want to catch up to me, then you must digest it, surpass it, and defeat it." Zhuowen looked at Zhuo Junan's pained expression and spoke softly. It was as if he was teaching Zhuo Junan a lesson. At this moment, Zhuowen had passed on all his knowledge and experience to Zhuo Junan, including the primordial technique. He firmly believed that with Zhuo Junan's comprehension ability and his inheritance, he would definitely be able to catch up to him. In the future, he would rise rapidly and become a powerful expert in the 100 Outer Realms. He was looking forward to the arrival of that day. Chapter 4500. When Zhuo Junan finally fainted from the intense pain, Qi Lin happened to walk in. "Junan." Qi Lin hurried to Zhuo Junan's side and held him in her arms, her eyes full of worry. "Little girl, don't worry. Junan has only fainted. I'm leaving, remember to take good care of him." Zhuowen looked at Qi Lin and continued, "Before I leave, I hope you can help me pass on a message to Junan. Senior, please tell me, this junior will definitely pass on your message in full detail. Qi Lin said seriously. A so-called expert is someone who can gradually crush adversity at any time. In the future, he still has a long way to go and will be even more difficult. But as long as he doesn't give up, he can turn adversity into strength and continue to improve and grow. Do your best, my son. As soon as she finished speaking, Qi Lin was shocked to find that Zhuowen's figure had already disappeared. Junan's father is really strong. With such a strong father, Junan didn't want to rely on him and instead wanted to rely on his own strength. You're really handsome. Qi Lin stretched out her fair hand and gently stroked Junan's cheek, her eyes as tender as water. Master, don't we need to send someone to protect the young master? Huang Ju followed behind Zhuowen on the way and couldn't help but ask. No need. A young eagle needs to face difficulties alone in order to grow into a mighty eagle that soars through the 9 heavens. Zhuowen responded indifferently. Although he said so, he had actually left some tricks on Zhuojunan. In the inheritance he had given Zhuojunan, it contained 3 full blows of his current strength, enough to repel any expert below the reverse ancient starlight level. Moreover, once his tricks were triggered, Zhuowen would immediately discover and report back to him the specific location of Zhuojunan. This was the best preparation Zhuowen could do for Zhuojunan. After Zhuowen returned to the Kanglan domain, he immediately became busy. After all, the Kanglan domain was still in its infancy and there were many things that were far from perfect that required Zhuowen to deal with personally. Time flew and in the blink of an eye, several decades had passed. The development of the Kanglan domain was finally on the right track. During this period of time, many experts appeared in large numbers, and many of them were mortals who had cultivated the simplified version of the primordial technique. Zhuowen was not surprised by this. In the 100 territories of the outer realm, the largest number of people were naturally those mortals who were unable to attain the Tao. In the face of absolute numbers, there would definitely be a small number of true geniuses with peerless natural talent, and they were the group of people that had been buried by the supreme natural Tao root. However, this did not mean that their comprehension and talent were mediocre. It was this group of people who worshipped Zhuowen the most. This was because it was Zhuowen who had given them another chance to step onto the path of becoming a powerhouse. This was no different from a new lease of life. At the same time, all of the Rika cultivators had also reached the heaven-crushing stage under Duan Jipeng's training. Moreover, they had also started to join the Kanglan realm and assume certain positions. Zhuowen believed that as the strength of the Rika gradually increased, they would eventually enter the upper echelons of the Kanglan domain and gain some authority. However, this would all take time. What surprised Zhuowen the most was that Mu Chunxue and Lu Hantian had improved the fastest among everyone. In a short few decades, under the guidance of numerous resources and Moyan Wushang's personal guidance, their cultivation had improved extremely quickly after they had broken the heaven-crushing stage. When Zhuowen saw them again, their cultivation had already reached the heaven-crushing 8 transformations, the demonic god transformation stage. Feng Xiao, Long Xiaotian, Green Hat, and Purple Star Monarch's improvement speed was second only to the 2 of them, and they had also reached the heaven-crushing 7 transformations. As for Zhuowen's other relatives, such as Zhuo Xiangding, Zhuo Xiong'er, and so on, their talent was very average. They had spent several decades and with the help of numerous resources, they had only barely reached the heaven-crushing 1st transformation stage. However, Zhuowen did not force them. After all, not everyone's cultivation talent was the same. He naturally could not use the same standard for everyone. Kanglan Holy City, within the main hall. Zhuowen was sitting on the main seat, discussing matters with the higher-ups of the Kanglan domain. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly, and he stopped talking. In an instant, all the higher-ups in the main hall fell silent and looked at Zhuowen in puzzlement. Ziyang, Luo Ya, I'll leave the rest to you to discuss. I have something to do, so I'll go out for a while. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he disappeared from the main seat as if he had evaporated into thin air. In the main hall, the higher-ups looked at each other, not understanding what was going on. In the bedchamber, Zhuowen quietly appeared. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out a remnant map from the outside world. The remnant map was emitting a strange light, bright and dazzling, as if it was gilded. Boy, This remnant map suddenly changed like this. What's going on? Xiao He rushed out of the outside world, looking at the bright remnant map in front of him with a bewildered look, and asked. Zhuowen frowned slightly. In fact, he did not know what had happened to the remnant map. After experiencing extreme heat, the remnant map finally calmed down. Strange characters flew out from the remnant map. These characters were displayed in mid-air, in front of Zhuowen. Zhuowen was obviously unfamiliar with these characters, but the moment his eyes met the characters, his mind instantly understood the meaning of these characters. The wheel of history has begun to turn, evil spirits roar in the abyss, and all living beings sink in the sea of bitterness. The door to the abyss has been opened. Those who enter this door must give up everything. Zhuowen read the characters suspended in mid-air, but his eyes slowly narrowed. What the hell is this? Although Xiao He could not read the characters, he naturally understood what Zhuowen was saying, and his eyes were full of doubts. Abyss. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a thoughtful look, and he immediately thought of the owner of the remnant map. It was a powerful person from the Abyss domain, and the remnant map recorded the ruins where that powerful person fell. I'm afraid the door to the ruins marked by the remnant map has been opened. At present, this is the only way I can understand it, Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Boy, look. The remnant map is changing. Suddenly, Xiao He's exclamation attracted Zhuowen's attention. Zhuowen looked up and saw that the characters above the remnant map were beginning to combine, forming a three-dimensional image of a certain area. This is a topographic map of a certain place. This is… It's the extraterritorial starry sky. Zhuowen carefully looked at the three-dimensional image formed by countless characters and immediately recognized the approximate location of the map. The extraterritorial starry sky? Isn't it at the extraterritorial battlefield? Xiao He revealed a look of surprise. Zhuowen nodded, put away the remnant map, and took out a communication jade talisman to send a message to Elder Anshi. At the same time, in the depths of the various great forces of the Supreme Domain, every expert who possessed the remnant map had sensed the changes in the remnant map. Is it the extraterritorial starry sky? How interesting. Haha, the remnant map finally reacted. I've been waiting for a long time. The Abyss Domain, the most mysterious and invincible domain, the ruins of a powerful person, I'm really looking forward to it. The eyes of the experts who held the remnant map emitted a cold light, and they looked at the three-dimensional image revealed by the remnant map, eager to take action. Chapter 4501. It's actually in the extraterritorial starry sky. Zhuowen stared quietly at the three-dimensional map on the map fragment, his eyes flickering with a strange light. He had long heard of the extraterritorial battlefield. In order to improve his strength, Duan Jipeng had gone to the extraterritorial battlefield to gain experience and quickly entered the great carefree realm. It could be seen that the extraterritorial battlefield was indeed a supreme treasure land with many opportunities, as Duan Jipeng had said. Of course, high opportunities were also accompanied by high risks. This was the main reason why many cultivators from the 100 territories outside the outer realm had rushed into the extraterritorial battlefield. I heard that the extraterritorial battlefield is a battlefield specially opened for the extraterritorial creatures. There are too many experts in the extraterritorial battlefield. Once you enter, it's either you die or I die. It's very cruel. Xiao He floated in the air, her little paw rubbing her chin, her eyes full of seriousness. Yes. I've heard Brother Duan introduce the extraterritorial battlefield. It was jointly opened by the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy and the 5 Invincible Realms. As for the reason, Brother Duan doesn't know, Zhuowen said. Since Duan Jipeng knows about it, I think you'd better discuss it with him first. Anyway, you have a lot of places on the map fragment. I think you'll bring Duan Jipeng, right? Xiao He looked at Zhuowen and said. Yes. I do plan to bring Brother Duan. Zhuowen nodded slightly, took out the communication jade talisman, and sent a message to Duan Jipeng. After a while, Duan Jipeng hurried over and entered Zhuowen's palace. Brother Zhuo, why did you call me in such a hurry? Duan Jipeng asked. Brother Duan, Do you remember that you mentioned the extraterritorial battlefield to me? Zhuowen looked at Duan Jipeng and said in a deep voice. Duan Jipeng was stunned, then nodded heavily and said, "Of course I remember. I told you that I would give you a good opportunity. However, many things happened later, which caused the trip to the extraterritorial battlefield to be delayed." Speaking of this, Duan Jipeng's mouth revealed a bitter smile. When he'd first met Zhuowen in the 100 Territories, Zhuowen's cultivation had only been at the ancient star transformation. Now, Zhuowen's strength had already reached the point where he could only look up to him, and he had even accidentally become Zhuowen's subordinate. It had to be said that fate really played tricks on people. Zhuowen nodded. Back then, Duan Jipeng had indeed told him that he would bring him to a place of inheritance in the extraterritorial battlefield. Obviously, at that time, Duan Jipeng had planned to let Zhuowen grow up quickly. It was out of good intentions. This time, I'm going to make a trip to the extraterritorial battlefield. Brother Duan, I'll also give you a good fortune this time. I wonder if you want it. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth lifted into a smile. He gently opened his right hand, and a map fragment that was emitting a resplendent glow appeared in his palm. The moment Duan Jipeng saw this map fragment, his pupils shrank to the size of needles, revealing a look of disbelief. This map fragment is finally reacting. Duan Jipeng looked at the three-dimensional image that had appeared on the map fragment, and there was a look of excitement in the depths of his eyes. He had long known about the map fragment. Now that the map fragment had such a strange reaction, he naturally understood that the ruins marked in the map fragment were probably about to open. Yes, the map fragment suddenly sent me the location, and it also conveyed a very strange message. Zhuowen said in a deep voice. What message? Duan Jipeng asked curiously. The wheel of history has begun to turn. Ferocious spirits roared in the abyss, and all living beings sank in the sea of bitterness. The door to the abyss has opened. Those who enter this door must give up everything. Zhuowen recited slowly. After listening, Duan Jipeng's pupils shrank slightly, revealing a look of contemplation. The so-called abyss, is it referring to the abyss realm? Duan Jipeng murmured. Zhuowen shook his head and said, I don't think so. Combined with the following sentence, I think the abyss here should be referring to the ruins of the abyss realm's almighty. And I have a hunch that the ruins are definitely very dangerous. Duan Jipeng's eyes flickered, and his brows furrowed slightly. He said, You're right. According to your understanding, it should be correct. This trip bodes ill rather than well. I wonder if the map fragment has the specific time of opening of the ruins? Zhuowen shook his head and said with a wry smile, There is no such thing. It only shows such a three-dimensional image. I have never been to the extraterritorial battlefield, so I don't know the terrain there. Did you discover anything? Duan Jipeng carefully observed, and suddenly his face turned ugly. What's wrong? Zhuowen saw that Duan Jipeng's expression was not very good and hurriedly asked. If I didn't guess wrongly, the place that the map fragment shows should be one of the most dangerous places in the extraterritorial battlefield, the demonic corpse cliff. Duan Jipeng's expression was ugly as he slowly spat out these words. Demonic corpse cliff? Zhuowen's eyes were still a little confused. He was not familiar with the extraterritorial battlefield, and this so-called demonic corpse cliff was the first time he had heard of it. Yes, the demonic corpse cliff is known as one of the most dangerous places in the extraterritorial battlefield. This place is filled with mountains of corpses and evil spirits. Many cultivators who entered this place died without knowing why. When Duan Jipeng mentioned the demonic corpse cliff, his body trembled slightly. Clearly, he was fearful and in awe of such a dangerous place. He died without knowing why. Zhuowen immediately noticed the key point that Duan Jipeng mentioned. Yes. The reason why the demonic corpse cliff is known as one of the most dangerous places in the extraterritorial battlefield is largely because of this. The cultivators who entered all died in a very strange manner, and the cause of their death has not been found out until now. Duan Jipeng smiled bitterly, and there was still a trace of fear in his eyes. There was once a lawful embodiment of heaven and earth powerhouse who went in to save people, but in the end, they all disappeared without a trace. Dead or alive, no corpses were found. Duan Jipeng continued. F***ck. So scary. Even a lawful embodiment of heaven and earth powerhouse went in and disappeared without a trace. What the hell is this place? Xiao Hei's hair stood on end, and he felt a chill run down his spine. However, Zhuowen calmed down and said, "You said that a lawful embodiment of heaven and earth powerhouse went missing inside. In other words, there is a high probability that a powerhouse of this level is not easily killed in the demonic corpse cliff. There is a high possibility that they are trapped somewhere." Duan Jipeng nodded and said, "Brother Zhuo is right. Back then, many people also had such a guess. But this is already scary enough. Powerhouses below the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth have a high risk of dying, and they died without knowing why. Even a lawful embodiment of heaven and earth powerhouse has a high probability of being trapped in there and difficult to find traces." Zhuowen also nodded in agreement. Just based on this point alone, the demonic corpse cliff was indeed a very scary place. In the 100 domains outside the world, a lawful embodiment of heaven and earth powerhouse was already standing at the peak of the world. For the demonic corpse cliff to be able to trap a powerhouse of this level, one had to admit that it was indeed terrifying. Chapter 4502. Brother Duan, are you still willing to go with me? Zhuowen looked at Duan Jipeng and asked seriously. Duan Jipeng's eyes showed hesitation. The demonic corpse cliff was indeed an extremely dangerous place for him. Although his cultivation had improved a lot and he had reached the early stage of the inverse ancient starlight stage, he still feared the demonic corpse cliff. However, he still had a deep fear of the demonic corpse cliff. If he was not careful in that place, he would definitely die. Zhuowen looked at Duan Jipeng silently and did not urge him. He patiently waited for Duan Jipeng's answer. I'll go. Riches and honor are found in danger. I must go. Duan Jipeng gritted his teeth and looked at Zhuowen with a firm gaze. He seemed to have used all his strength to shout. A wisp of a smile appeared on the corners of Zhuowen's mouth as he nodded and said, "All right. Brother Duan, don't worry. I won't let anything happen to you. I promise." Duan Jipeng smiled bitterly. "I hope so." Although he knew that Zhuowen was strong enough, he could not be as strong as the law phenomenon. However, he still had hope in his heart. After all, Zhuowen had the incomplete map. Relying on the incomplete map's guidance, the danger in the demonic corpse cliff would be reduced to the lowest. As long as they were lucky enough, they might really gain something. Brother Duan, don't worry. This time, there's a senior with the law phenomenon cultivation. He promised me that he would fight for me 3 times. Zhuowen said with a smile. Duan Jipeng was startled and immediately revealed a look of ecstasy. With the incomplete map's guidance and a law phenomenon expert, their chances of success would be greater. Since there's such an expert accompanying you, why didn't you say so earlier? You made me worried. Duan Jipeng rolled his eyes at Zhuowen. I wanted to see your determination. In the end, you didn't let me down, Zhuowen said with a smile. Duan Jipeng took a deep look at Zhuowen and smiled. The next day, Zhuowen and Duan Jipeng were ready to set off for the extraterritorial battlefield. There were not many people accompanying them this time. Other than Zhuowen and Duan Jipeng, there were also Zi Yang and Luo Ya. The reason Zhuowen brought these 2 people with him was because they were currently the 2 people with the highest cultivation bases in the Kanglan domain. If they could obtain a great opportunity in the demonic corpse cliff this time, perhaps the 2 of them would have a high probability of breaking through to the law phenomenon realm, thus allowing the Kanglan domain to possess the qualifications to become a super domain. Moyan Wushang originally wanted to come along, but because Mu Chunxue, Lu Hantian, and other Riker executives still needed her to train, so she couldn't leave. In addition, the Kanglan domain must be controlled by someone who Zhuowen could trust and who was strong enough. Duan Jipeng, Zi Yang, and Luo Ya had all left with him. Only Moyan Wushang was left. Husband, you're still so worrisome. You only know how to run around every day. Mu Chunxue came in front of Zhuowen and gently tied at his clothes, her eyes full of reproach. Zhuowen scratched his head, an apologetic look on his face. Mu Chunxue was right. He had only been reunited with Mu Chunxue and his family and friends for a few decades, and now he had to leave again. This made him feel a little ashamed. But, I know you're doing this for us, so you must come back safely. We're all waiting for you. Mu Chenshue's eyes were like water. She smiled sweetly at Zhuowen and hugged Zhuowen tightly. After the two were done, Zhuowen, Lu Hantian, Long Xiaotian, and other Rika close friends hugged one by one, and finally looked at Moyan Wushang. Wushang, I'm sorry to put this burden on you. It's been hard on you this time. Zhuowen walked forward and gently hugged Moyan Wushang with an apologetic look in his eyes. Why are you saying this to me? You're all my closest friends. Shouldn't it be natural for me to do things for my family? Moyan Wushang blinked and said in a slightly playful tone. Haha, it's my fault. We're a family. Let's not say these polite words. I'll leave everything to you. Zhuowen smiled, jumped onto the divine warship, and waved goodbye to everyone. After leaving Kanglan Realm, Zhuowen did not go directly to the extraterritorial battlefield. Instead, he went to Shuyang Realm. Elder Anshi had sent him a message, asking him to come to Shuyang Divine City first, and then they would go to the extraterritorial battlefield together. In Shuyang Divine City, in the hall of the Shulong family, Xu Jieying sat on the main seat. Beside him was a middle-aged man with an extraordinary aura. This man was the head of the Shulong family, Mi Haomiao. Next to Xu Jieying stood the pale-faced Xu Mianyang, who wore a sinister expression. Head Mi, the ruins of the map fragment should be opening soon. This time, with our strong alliance, we'll definitely reap a lot of benefit. Xu Jieying's gaze fell on Mi Haomiao, and a confident smile appeared on his face. Mi Haomiao nodded and pondered for a moment before saying, I heard that the ruins are located in the demonic corpse cliff? Yes. Xu Jieying narrowed her eyes and became extremely serious. The demonic corpse cliff was a dangerous place that even lawful embodiment of heaven and earth experts like Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao were wary of. That's not a safe place. Even you and I have to be extremely careful. However, with the map fragment's guidance, our danger will be greatly reduced. Xu Jieying said indifferently. Mi Haomiao nodded and said, I believe that little bastard Zhuowen must have received the notice of the map fragment. I wonder if that little bastard has the guts to enter the demonic corpse cliff. Xu Jieying said indifferently, according to Zhuowen's character, he'll definitely enter. However, he's no fool. He'll definitely use the map fragment's quota to rope in many people, including the Shuming family. Brother Jieying, entering the demonic corpse cliff is a good opportunity. If I'm not wrong, the map fragment is an extremely important part of the ruins. The more map fragments we have, the more advantageous it will be for us after we enter the ruins. Mi Haomiao said eerily. Xu Jieying's eyes lit up as he said in a low voice, we can't make a move in Shuyang City. If we want to make a move, we'll have to go to the extraterritorial battlefield. Oh, Brother Jieying, do you have a brilliant plan? Mi Haomiao looked at Xu Jieying and asked thoughtfully. It's not a brilliant plan, but it can at least make Zhuowen suffer. The corners of Xu Jieying's mouth curled into a sinister smile as he revealed his plan. While the Xu Long and Xu Qi families were secretly working together, Zhuowen had already entered Shuyang City and met up with Elder Anshi. Oh, are you planning to let Li Yinglong join your team? After a short conversation, Elder Anshi looked at Zhuowen and asked in surprise. Yes. This trip to the demonic corpse cliff doesn't bode well. Naturally, the more experts there are, the better, Zhuowen said in a low voice. Elder Anshi nodded and didn't refuse. After knowing that the ruins were located at the demonic corpse cliff, he knew that this trip would be extremely dangerous. It would be a good thing if there was another lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert like him. After confirming this, Zhuowen and his group went to the Shuming family to meet Li Yinglong. After knowing the purpose of Zhuowen's visit, Li Yinglong was extremely enthusiastic and agreed to go to the demonic corpse cliff with Zhuowen without much hesitation. Chapter 4503. Zhuo Xiaoyu, the ruins are a rare opportunity. I would like to bring some juniors with me. Is that possible? Li Yinglong looked at Zhuowen and asked somewhat embarrassedly. Zhuowen pondered for a moment and said, yes, but it's best not to bring too many. Otherwise, You won't be able to take care of everyone. Li Yinglong smiled and said, I will only bring Li Ying and Li Shuo. They are the strongest geniuses of the younger generation of the Shuesheng family. Sure. As long as Master Li can protect them, I have no objections. Zhuowen nodded. After confirming Li Yinglong's affirmative answer, Zhuowen took out his communication jade and sent a message to Godden. Back in the Golden Crow Mountains, he had promised Godden that he would give him a spot in the map fragment. Naturally, he would not go back on his word. Not long after the message was sent, Godden replied to Zhuowen. To Zhuowen's surprise, Godden rejected Zhuowen's invitation. The reason was very simple. Godden and the forces behind him could only be considered below average in a super realm. Moreover, they did not have any lawful embodiment of heaven and earth experts. Therefore, when Godden found out that the ruins were at the demonic corpse cliff, he chose to give up in the end. Zhuowen did not say anything. He respected Godden's choice. After all, the demonic corpse cliff was indeed too dangerous. After weighing the pros and cons, Godden decided to give up in the end. Zhuowen could understand this. After Zhuowen and the others stayed in the Shuesheng family for 3 days, Li Yinglong and the others finally finished their preparations. The next day, in the open space in front of the Shuesheng family's main hall, a rather large divine ship was parked. Li Yinglong walked out of the main hall with Li Ying and Li Shuo. Lord Zhuo, I'm really sorry to have kept you waiting. Li Yinglong walked forward with an apologetic expression. Then, he looked at Li Ying and Li Shuo behind him and gave them a meaningful look. Greetings, Lord Zhuo. Li Ying and Li Shuo hurried forward and bowed respectfully to Zhuowen. Li Shuo secretly sized up Zhuowen, and he couldn't help but sigh in his heart that Zhuowen was really different from the past. Back when he and Li Hong had invited Zhuowen to participate in the 3 Great Clans tournament, Zhuowen's strength and status were not as high as they were now. It had only been a short while, but Zhuowen had already become a figure that even their patriarch had to treat with respect. At the same time, Li Shuo rejoiced inwardly. His relationship with Zhuowen had been relatively good since the beginning and he had not offended the latter. On the other hand, Shell Ying's heart was in a mess. After all, during the competition between the 3 clans, he had underestimated Zhuowen and offended him. Now, the difference between him and Zhuowen was like heaven and earth. He couldn't help but worry that Zhuowen would hold a grudge against him because of this. No need to be so courteous. It was family head Li who gave you the opportunity to go to the ruins. The one you should really thank is family head Li. Zhuowen waved his hand and said flatly. Li Shuo and Li Ying hurriedly said yes. When they got up, they noticed Elder Anshi beside Zhuowen. Elder Anshi, why are you here too? Li Ying asked in surprise. Elder Anshi said indifferently, I owe Zhuo Xiaoyu a favor. Therefore, I'm following him this time to protect him. Li Ying and Li Shuo looked at each other. They were even more in awe of Zhuowen. Elder Anshi was a genuine lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert. His strength was even above their patriarch, Li Yinglong. Moreover, Elder Anshi's identity was extremely mysterious. Even the King of Hell's people had to give him face. Such a big shot actually owed Zhuowen a favor. This shocked Li Ying and Li Shuo, and they were even more in awe of Zhuowen. Li Yinglong was deep in thought. He looked deeply at Zhuowen and thought, it seems that I've underestimated Zhuo Xiaoyu. He might be even more powerful than I thought. Thinking of this, Li Yinglong was even more determined to build a good relationship with Zhuowen. Young Master Zhuo, you have to be careful of Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao when you go to the extraterritorial battlefield. The 2 of them should be working together. Li Yinglong came to Zhuowen's side and whispered. Zhuowen nodded. His heart was cold. Speaking of which, the map fragment in Xu Jieying's hand was snatched by Zhuowen and given to Xu Ju. Originally, he had no enmity with Xu Ju. Unfortunately, Xu Ju was truly too conceited and opinionated, and he actually wanted the other incomplete map in Chen Shi's possession and trampled on Chen Shi's bottom line. In the end, Xu Ju suffered a double loss. Even the Xulong family suffered a great loss. If the Xulong family still wants to cause trouble, then I'll accompany them to the end. Zhuowen's lips curled into a cold smile. With his current strength, he might not be able to contend with the Shulong family. However, if the Shulong family wanted to kill him, it would be extremely difficult. He really did not fear these two families. Li Yinglong's lips moved when he saw that Zhuowen didn't care too much. In the end, he said nothing. Only old man Anshi glanced at Zhuowen, deep in thought. He couldn't help but recall how Zhuowen had easily brought back the heaven and earth furnace. He knew very well that the latter must have some extremely powerful technique that he didn't know about. After the group entered the divine ship, it rose into the air and shot off into the distance with a whoosh. The extraterritorial battlefield was jointly established by the 5 invincible domains and the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy. Thus, to enter the battlefield, one must first enter one of the 5 invincible domains and the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy. Old man Anshi sat in the main seat of the divine ship. With a light tap of his finger, a huge topographic map appeared in the air. This topographic map was a detailed and complete map of the extraterritorial battlefield. The map was divided into a total of 108 regions. Among them, 15 regions were obviously vastly different from the others. These 15 regions were where the 9 supreme domains, the 5 invincible domains, and the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy were located. These 15 regions were separated from the other regions by the vast and strange dark ruins. This dark ruins was like an endless undercurrent that ran through the extraterritorial battlefield. It was like the strictest dividing line that separated the regions above the supreme domain. Zhuowen silently looked at the topographic map above him and suddenly thought of the concept of the difference between immortals and mortals. The supreme domains, invincible domains, and the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy above the dark ruins were like high and mighty immortals that looked down on the higher, middle, and lower domains below the dark ruins. The 15 regions were naturally different from each other. The 9 supreme domains were located at the outermost layer of the dark ruins and were also the regions closest to the higher domains. Further in were the 5 invincible domains. These 5 invincible domains were extremely far away from the supreme domains and were much further away than the supreme and higher domains. The 5 invincible domains were arranged in a ring, and at their core was a huge continent. Zhuowen's gaze was instantly attracted to the continent surrounded by the 5 invincible domains. This continent is... Zhuowen muttered to himself. Old man Anshi pointed at the continent surrounded by the invincible domains and said with a proud smile, "This continent is the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy, so this is where the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy is located." Zi Yang and Luo Ya were surprised. They had never been to the Invincible Domains or the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy, so they naturally did not know the exact location of the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy. Because Duan Jipeng had been to the extraterritorial battlefield, he had a rough understanding of the geography of the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy, so he was not surprised when old man Anshi mentioned it. Needless to say, Li Yinglong and the others were people from the Supreme Domains, so this was common knowledge to them. Chapter 4504. The extraterritorial battlefield is vast and boundless. It is full of dangers and opportunities. If you want to enter the extraterritorial battlefield, you can only go through the 5 invincible realms and the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. At this point, Elder Anshi paused for a moment and continued, "This time, we will go to the extraterritorial battlefield from the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. Elder Anshi, the closest place should be the Boundless Realm. Why do we have to go to the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy, which is further away?" Duan Jipeng suddenly asked. He had entered the extraterritorial battlefield through the Boundless Realm. Elder Anshi looked at Duan Jipeng and said seriously, "Because I have something to do in the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy." Everyone was speechless as they looked at old man Anshi. It turned out that this guy had chosen to go through the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy because of personal matters. This way, he could deal with some of his personal matters. However, although everyone cursed in their hearts, they did not object. They also knew that old man Anshi was from the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy. This time, they could use old man Anshi's connections to get in through the back door. Although the speed of the divine ship was fast, the dark ruins was vast and endless. It would take a lot of time to reach the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. After the discussion, everyone went back to their rooms to cultivate. After Zhuowen entered his room, he did not cultivate his divine power. Instead, he began to meditate on array Dao. He knew very well that it would be difficult for his strength to make a big breakthrough in a short period of time. Now, the only areas where he could still improve were his divine soul and array Dao. During the voyage of the divine ship, Zhuowen frantically meditated on the heaven patching catalog and the thunder origin array diagram. And his formation's Dao level was also gradually improving amidst this kind of frenzied comprehension. Zhuowen's array Dao level, after decades of cultivation in the Kanglan realm, had reached the late stage of the third heaven of the eternal realm from the middle stage. In fact, he was only half a step away from the peak of the third heaven of the eternal realm. Zhuowen hoped that before arriving at the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy, his array Dao level could improve further and reach the peak of the third heaven of the eternal realm. Because, once he reached this realm, he could rely on the thunder origin array diagram to set up an early fourth heaven eternal realm array. Time flew. When Zhuowen gradually woke up, his soul instantly underwent a metamorphosis. A wave of understanding rose from his heart and washed through his limbs and bones like ripples. At this moment, his array Dao level had completely sublimated, reaching the peak of the third heaven of the eternal realm. Zhuowen patted his sleeves, but his eyes were neither sad nor happy. He knew that this was the result of his accumulation. After decades of meditation and cultivation in the Kanglan realm, his level of array Dao was already infinitely close to the peak of the third heavenly layer of the eternal realm. This time, his luck was quite good. He had the opportunity to gain enlightenment, which was why he was able to progress so smoothly. In the following days, Zhuowen occasionally went out to meet Duan Jipeng and the others. Occasionally, he would use the thunder origin array to arrange an early stage fourth heaven's eternal realm grand array. Although his array Dao had reached the peak of the third heavenly layer of the eternal realm, and he had the assistance of the thunder origin array diagram, it was still not enough. However, it was still difficult for him to arrange an early stage fourth heaven's eternal realm grand array. The failure rate was very high. Now, the most powerful thing he had was the peerless thunder god array, which was infinitely close to the fourth heaven's eternal realm and extremely powerful. Of course, the main reason why Zhuowen found it so difficult to arrange an early stage fourth heaven's eternal realm grand array was that he didn't have an array diagram of the fourth heaven's eternal realm. The grand array he practiced was actually arranged according to his own imagination. Although it had reached the early stage fourth heaven's eternal realm, it was full of loopholes. After all, his level hadn't reached the fourth heaven's eternal realm, so he didn't have the ability to create a grand array of this level at will. For this reason, Zhuowen knocked on the door of Old Man Anshi. "Zhuo Xiaoyu, what's the matter?" Old Man Anshi opened the door, invited Zhuowen into the room, and asked faintly, "Senior Anshi, this Zhuo has a presumptuous request. It's about the array diagram of the early stage fourth heaven's eternal realm grand array." Zhuowen sat opposite Old Man Anshi and asked a little awkwardly. Old Man Anshi's eyes lit up and he asked in surprise, "You want the array diagram of the early stage fourth heaven's eternal realm grand array? Do you want to arrange a grand array?" Zhuowen nodded and said, "Yes." Old Man Anshi was shocked and blurted out, "Zhuo Xiaoyu, are you already a divine array master of the fourth heaven's eternal realm?" Old Man Anshi had long known that Zhuowen was also proficient in array Dao. But Zhuowen should only be a divine array master of the third heaven's eternal realm. Could it be that he had broken through so quickly? Zhuowen shook his head and said, "I haven't reached that level yet, but I'm very close. That's why I want the array diagram of the fourth heaven's eternal realm to comprehend the array patterns in it and prepare for my future breakthrough." Old Man Anshi sucked in a breath of cold air. Very close. This also meant that Zhuowen was already a divine array master of the third heaven's eternal realm. This was also very amazing. At Zhuowen's age, there were only a handful of juniors who could reach this level, even in the history of the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy. "Zhuo Xiaoyu, are you sure you don't want to consider the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy? With your talent, if you can enter the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy, you will be like a fish in water." Old Man Anshi finally couldn't help but invite Zhuowen again. In his eyes, Zhuo Wen's cultivation talent was considered pretty good, but it was still far from reaching the peak level. But this formation's Dao talent truly shocked him. Zhuo Wen's eyes flickered and he said, "Senior Anshi, I will consider this matter, but I have to wait until this relic is over. At present, I still want to focus on this trip to the relic." Old man Anshi said apologetically, "This old man is rude. Speaking of array diagrams, there must be some in the Archean Scripture Pavilion of the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy." Archean Scripture Pavilion? Zhuowen murmured. Yes. The Archean Scripture Pavilion is the repository of the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy. It contains 99% of the ancient books in the 100 domains, including books on divine powers, secret skills, array Dao, equipment Dao, alchemy Dao, and many other aspects. No other force can compare with its rich collection of books. Old man Anshi's eyes lit up and he continued, "When we return to the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy, I can help you take a look at the Archean Scripture Pavilion. But array diagrams of the fourth heavens of the Eternal Realm are considered important books in the Archean Scripture Pavilion. I may not be able to borrow them, but I can try." Hearing this, Zhuowen's eyes flashed and he hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Senior Anshi." Old man Anshi waved his hand and said with a smile, "Zhuo Xiaoyu, you are too polite. After all, you and I have known each other for a long time. Of course, I won't refuse." Chapter 4505. After a few more days, the divine warship trembled violently and came to a stop. "Everyone, we have arrived at the continent where the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy is located." Elder Anshi's voice rang out in everyone's minds. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes, stood up, pushed open the door, and walked out. Through the huge floor-to-ceiling window outside the hall, Zhuowen saw a huge continent suspended in front of the divine warship. The most prominent feature of this continent was the huge peaks. At a glance, one could see that close to 80% of the continent was formed by these massive mountains. As they approached the continent, Zhuowen discovered that streaks of light were scattered all over the continent like stars in the sky, interweaving into a dense net-like route. These streaks of light were the tail lights of the divine warships as they flew through the void at high speed. Obviously, the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy was in the core area of the 100 outer domains. It could be said that the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy had frequent exchanges with the outside world. Of course, the so-called outside world was limited to the supreme and invincible domains. The other domains were not qualified to enter the continent where the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy was located. Moreover, even in the supreme and invincible domains, only those experts who were recognized could exchange and trade with the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy. Is this entire continent under the influence of the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy? Zi Yang and Luo Ye looked at the huge continent in front of them, as well as the tail lights of the divine warships that interweaved into a net in midair. They were naturally shocked. Duan Jipeng's eyes were also filled with surprise. It was his first time coming to the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy, and he was also shocked by the scene in front of him. This continent is ruled by the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy, but most of the people here are not from the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy. The real Archean Heavenly Dao Academy is located at the core of the continent. That is the real location of the Archean Heavenly Dao Academy. Elder Anshi walked out. When he saw everyone looking at the continent in shock, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he pointed in the direction of the center of the continent. Everyone looked over and vaguely saw a dazzling brilliance in the center of the continent. There stood a huge peak that was far more majestic and tall than the surrounding mountains. On top of each mountain peak, there were many magnificent buildings. Moreover, they were emitting a bright light, as if they were in a fairyland. Under the instructions of Old Man Anshi, the divine ship docked at a dock in the south of the continent. The Primeval Heavenly Dao Academy had a rule that within the Primeval continent, flying divine artifacts were not allowed to casually travel through the air. To head to the Primeval Heavenly Dao Academy, one had to ride a mount specially raised by the natives of the Primeval continent. Dozens of divine warships were docked at the dock. On the shore, there were several teams patrolling the area. The auras of these patrols were extremely powerful, and the clothes they wore were rather peculiar as well. They were all navy blue. In front of their chests, there was a badge with white wings spread out. Zhuowen carefully observed and discovered that these patrol members were all very young, but their auras were extremely powerful. They are all outer disciples of the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy. They were sent to patrol the docks. Did you see their attire? This is the uniform unique to the outer court disciples of the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy. Old man Anshi walked to Zhuowen's side and saw that he was observing the patrol members. Zhuowen nodded. In fact, when he saw this group of patrol members, he had already guessed it. Now, old man Anshi's words had confirmed his guess. Hey, Elder Anshi, why are you back? A patrol passed by Zhuowen's group. The young man in the lead scanned the crowd and stopped his gaze on old man Anshi. He could not help but exclaim in surprise. As soon as he said that, the rest of the patrol members gathered around and looked at old man Anshi with reverence. I have some matters to attend to. After that, I will head to the extraterritorial battlefield. Old man Anshi said lightly. The young man in the lead nodded. After dismissing the rest of the patrol members, he said respectfully to old man Anshi, Elder Anshi, I will arrange a mount for you. Who are these people? The young man's gaze fell on Zhuowen and the rest as he asked in confusion. Zhuowen and the rest were unfamiliar faces. He guessed that they were not from the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy. They are my friends. They have come with me to attend to some matters. Go ahead and arrange a mount for them. Old man Anshi said lightly. The young man nodded and did not dare to ask any more questions. He led old man Anshi and the rest to the village behind the dock. In the Archean continent, the most common sight was a village. These villages were formed by groups of aborigines. The village that the young man brought them to was called Lingxiao Village. Although it was the name of a village, its scale was no less than that of a bustling city. There were more than 1 million people in the village. There were bluestone roads, streets, corridors, shops, and pavilions. This is obviously a huge city. Why is it called a village? Duan Jipeng muttered to himself in confusion. The young man explained with a smile, Brother, you may not know this, but in the Archean continent, there were various kinds of villages. Lingxiao Village was one of the small villages in the past. Its population was only a few hundred people. Later, with the establishment of the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy, the entire Archean continent gradually developed. Many small villages gradually developed into huge cities. However, the people in these villages were nostalgic. After developing into cities, they continued to use their old names. Zhuowen and the rest nodded inwardly when they heard the explanation. Soon, the young man brought them to a huge beast pen. There were all kinds of flying beasts in this beast pen. Each of them had something similar to a saddle. Obviously, these flying beasts had been tamed and became the cultivator's personal mounts. The young man called out the owner of the beast pen. After a round of bargaining, he returned. Elder Anshi, I have discussed with the owner. He can give you a discount. Originally, the cost of a mount was 1 million chaos spirit stones per person. Now, he will give you a 10% discount. Each of you will receive 900,000 chaos spirit stones. As soon as the young man finished speaking, Zhuowen and the rest sucked in a breath of cold air. They were surprised that the price of a mount was so high. Old man Anshi nodded. Obviously, he was aware of the price of a flying beast mount. Here are 7,200,000 chaos spirit stones. Li Yinglong took out a pouch of spirit stones and handed it to the young man. He paid everyone's fees. The young man nodded and handed the pouch to the owner of the beast pen. The Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy set up the no-fly rule on purpose. It's so that the aborigines can earn more spirit stones. When the young man walked towards the owner of the beast pen, Zhuowen looked at old man Anshi and said indifferently. Chapter 4506. Elder Anshi smiled and said, You can say that. After all, if the aborigines want to develop, they can't rely on the support of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy alone. You outsiders who trade with them are the main source of funds. Zhuowen rolled his eyes. He thought to himself that the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy was really business-minded. They would not let go of any opportunity to make money. Roar. The roars of beasts resounded. The sturdy iron gates in front of them opened and the flying beasts were released. Zhuowen finally saw the true appearance of these flying beasts. The flying beasts were not big. They were about 20 feet in size and were covered in bright, sturdy scales. They had a pair of feather wings that were dozens of feet long. They were like peacocks spreading their tails, emitting a dazzling colorful light. Everyone, each of you will ride one of the flying beasts. Our horseman will lead the way and command the flying beast. The owner of the beast pen was a middle-aged man with a rosacea nose. He had a big belly and a fat head. He came forward and smiled at Zhuowen and the others. Most of his eyes were on Old Man Anshi, and his eyes were filled with awe. Obviously, he knew about Old Man Anshi's special identity. Thank you for your hard work. Elder Anshi nodded. You're too kind, sir. It's my honor to be able to work for you, the owner hurriedly said and ordered his subordinates to lead the flying beasts over. Zhuowen stepped forward and grabbed the reins handed to him by the staff. The flying beasts were docile and did not do anything excessive. They just looked at Zhuowen indifferently. Sir, you just need to ride on it. Our horseman will take care of the rest. The staff member of the animal pen laughed. Zhuowen nodded and mounted on it. The others also mounted on the flying beasts one after another. At the same time, a huge black shadow swept out from the depths of the beast pen. It was a flying beast that was much larger than ordinary flying beasts. It was at least 10 feet long and emitted a sharp light. When this huge flying beast appeared, the other flying beasts bowed their heads and trembled with fear in their eyes. A burly young man in armor rode on the back of the huge flying beast. He looked mighty and extraordinary. Greetings, sir. I'm the horseman of the beast pen, Cheng Yong. I'll be your guide to the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. Although the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy is not far from the center of the Archean continent, it's easy to get lost on the way without a guide. The young man's voice was loud and full of enthusiasm. Zhuowen was puzzled and could not help looking at Elder Anshi. After all, Old Man Anshi was from the immemorial Heavenly Tao Academy. He was more than enough to lead the way. They didn't seem to need a guide. These guides often travel between the primordial Heavenly Tao Academy and the edge of the continent, so they are more familiar with the terrain than the people from the primordial Heavenly Tao Academy. In a way, he's more familiar with the terrain than I am. Old Man Anshi naturally saw the doubt in Zhuowen's eyes. Moreover, I'm lead the way. Zhuowen couldn't help but roll his eyes when he heard Old Man Anshi's words. Let's go. The young man roared enthusiastically. The huge flying beast under him flew into the air and let out a strange roar. Under the influence of the huge flying beast's roar, the flying beasts under Zhuowen and the rest flew up and followed behind the huge flying beast. Indeed, the entire Archean continent is set up with an extremely powerful anti-flight restriction. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes as they flew high in the sky. He immediately felt the faint fluctuation of the restriction in the sky. Zhuowen knew very well that the fluctuation of the restriction was specially targeted at cultivators. Once a cultivator tried to fly in the sky, he would be attacked by the anti-flight restriction and blasted down from the sky. As the flying beasts went deeper into the Archean continent, Zhuowen and the rest became more and more solemn. The closer they got to the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy, the more restrictions there were. Although these restrictions had not been activated and were merely concealed, it still caused Zhuowen to tremble with fear. He knew very well that once these restrictions were activated, they would be seriously injured even if they did not die. The Archean Heavenly Tao Academy is indeed powerful. Zhuowen sighed in his heart. They had set up anti-flight restrictions on the Archean continent and hidden so many formations in the area near the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. This was not something that any random force could do. Moreover, as they went deeper into the huge mountain area of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy, the terrain became more complicated. What a complicated terrain. If no one leads us, we will definitely get lost in this area, Duan Jipeng said in horror. The rest nodded in agreement. It was no wonder that they needed an experienced rider to lead them into the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. With such a complicated terrain, it would be impossible for anyone to get out smoothly. Zhuoan could even feel an extremely powerful aura in this terrain. The moment they entered this place, these auras locked onto them like a hurricane. However, after discovering that they were all riding on flying beasts, the auras changed and ignored Zhuoan and the rest. The deeper they went, the more frightened they became. This was because the deeper they went, the more hidden experts, formations, and traps there were. Finally, the flying beast stopped in front of a huge mountain gate. Everyone, this is the mountain gate of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. My mission has been completed, so I will take my leave now. After Zhuoan and the rest got off the flying beast, the burly young man cupped his fists at Zhuoan and the rest, then flew away on the huge flying beast. The small flying beasts followed closely behind, disappearing from Zhuoan and the others' sight in an instant. As expected of the most powerful force in the 100 territories. Just outside the academy, there are so many barriers and trap. It's really amazing. Duan Jipeng wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and sighed with lingering fear. Li Yinglong and the rest nodded in agreement. They had to admit that they had really learned something this time. Zhuoan's gaze fell on the huge and magnificent mountain gate in front of him. The entire mountain gate was 100 feet tall, and it was completely white and flawless. It was made of some kind of beautiful jade. The mountain gate was surrounded by white fog, and it looked like a fairyland. Behind the mountain gate was a steep line of sky. Under the hazy white fog, it was faintly visible and revealed a mysterious aura. Hey! Why is there no one guarding the mountain gate of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy? Li Yinglong looked at the mountain gate in surprise and was surprised to find that there was no one there. Who said there's no one? Look up. Old man Anshi pointed to the sky and said indifferently. Everyone could not help but look up and immediately saw a pair of huge lantern-like eyes staring coldly at them. What is that? Everyone was shocked and involuntarily took a few steps back. In the sky, clouds and mist lingered, and an incomparably huge black shadow was faintly discernible as it moved through the clouds and mist. Only that pair of lantern-like eyes that emitted a dazzling golden splendor looked down at everyone as if it was looking at ants. Chapter 4507. This is the divine beast of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy, the Heavenly Dragon Python. Old man Anshi explained unhurriedly. What a powerful aura. Brother Anshi, this Heavenly Dragon Python is probably more powerful than you and me, Li Yinglong said fearfully. Elder Anshi nodded and smiled. The Heavenly Dragon Python is at the late stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Even in the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy, it is considered a powerhouse. Duan Jipeng, Zi Yang, and the others gasped. The Heavenly Dragon Python was at the late stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. It could kill them with a wave of its hand. Anshi, who are these people? In the sky, the Heavenly Dragon Python's huge lantern-like eyes fell on Elder Anshi. Its voice was deafening and explosive. They are my friends. I followed them to the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy with the intention of entering the extraterritorial battlefield through the passage. Elder Anshi said calmly. Millimeter. Before entering the mountain gate, I will check them first. Tell them not to resist. As the Heavenly Dragon Python spoke, it opened its mouth and spat out a jet of black mist, enveloping the area. A strong stench assaulted their nostrils. Zhuoan and the others immediately became alert and tried to use their divine power to resist the mist. Don't resist. This is the aura of the Heavenly Dragon Python. It is used to check you. Don't worry, it won't hurt you. Elder Anshi hurriedly stopped them. Hearing this, Zhuoan and the others gave up resisting and allowed the stinky mist to envelop them. After a while, the mist dissipated. The Heavenly Dragon Python did not say a word. Its huge body hid in the clouds above. Let's go in. The Heavenly Dragon Python's ethereal voice came from the depths of the clouds. Let's go. Elder Anshi was calm and composed. He stepped through the mountain gate and walked up the stairs along the one-line sky. Zhuoan and the others followed closely behind. After walking out of the one-line sky, What appeared in front of them were giant peaks that emitted various colors of brilliance. On top of every giant peak, there were densely packed buildings, pavilions, and thousands of palaces. It could be said that there were too many to count, causing one to be dazzled. In the center of the many giant peaks was a huge valley, and in the middle of the valley was an incomparably huge square. The square was filled with towering white jade pillars. These white jade pillars were spread out like stars in the sky, dividing the huge square into many areas, such as the martial arts arena, the observation deck, the exchange area, the vending area, and so on. In this huge square, there were many people coming and going. All of them were disciples of the primordial Heavenly Tao Academy. This is the public area of the primordial Heavenly Tao Academy. It's the area where the disciples of the primordial Heavenly Tao Academy are most active. It's also the best place for the disciples to exchange their insights and strength. Old Man Anshi pointed to the huge valley in front of them and said with a smile. As expected of the archaic Heavenly Tao Academy, even the public area is so huge, it's amazing. Duan Jipeng could not help but sigh. Li Yinglong, Li Ying, and the others exclaimed endlessly with admiration. Compared to the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy, their Void Tier clan was truly extremely simple and crude, and it was completely incomparable. And this is only the outer court. Old Man Anshi said with a faint smile. Outer court? Everyone looked at Old Man Anshi in surprise. Yes. The primordial Heavenly Tao Academy is divided into the outer court and the inner court. The outer court is where the outer court disciples, outer court elders, and outer court inspectors gather. It's managed by the vice dean. The inner court is basically where the inner court disciples, personal disciples, sage masters, and other first-level existences reside. It's managed by the vice dean. The inner court is extremely mysterious and is the place where the true elites of the primordial Heavenly Tao Academy reside. Speaking of the inner court, Old Man Anshi's eyes flashed with a trace of envy. Obviously, the inner court was a great temptation to Old Man Anshi. Follow me to my mountain as guests first. Old Man Anshi said as he led Zhuowen and the others through the huge square. Many disciples in the square recognized Old Man Anshi's identity and greeted him respectfully. At the same time, they looked curiously at Zhuowen and the others behind Old Man Anshi. Along the way, Old Man Anshi also introduced Zhuowen and the others to the huge mountains surrounding the square. Each huge mountain was a lofty existence in the outer court. At the very least, only the outer court elders and outer court inspectors could have their own huge mountain. Of course, some outstanding outer court disciples who made outstanding contributions were also qualified to have their own huge mountain, but they were usually relatively remote and the mountain was relatively short. Old Man Anshi's mountain was above average. When they arrived at Old Man Anshi's mountain, a servant immediately waited at the foot of the mountain and led them in respectfully. Old Man Anshi didn't go in. After exhorting a few words, he left in a hurry. Zhuowen and the others knew that Old Man Anshi should have gone to deal with his personal affairs. The next day, Old Man Anshi returned to the mountain and told everyone that his personal affairs had been dealt with. Zhuowen and the others naturally wouldn't ask about Old Man Anshi's personal affairs. Senior Anshi, what about the array diagram? Zhuowen looked at Old Man Anshi and asked. Old Man Anshi had promised him that he would go to the Archean Scripture Pavilion to borrow an early-stage Fourth Heaven Eternal Realm array diagram for him to consult. Zhuowen naturally remembered this. Old Man Anshi laughed and said, "Zhuo Xiaoyu, don't worry. I still remember this. Today I will take you to the Archean Scripture Pavilion and let you choose the array diagram. However, it is limited to early-stage Fourth Heaven Eternal Realm array diagrams. This is my highest authority." Zhuowen nodded and cupped his fists to express his gratitude to Old Man Anshi. "Zhuo Xiaoyu, come with me. The rest of you continue to wait here. After you borrow the array diagram, we will set off to the extraterritorial battlefield." Old Man Anshi turned to look at Li Yinglong and the others. Naturally, they had no objections. The Archean Scripture Pavilion was located at the junction of the outer court and the inner court of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. Such a location was convenient for people from the outer court and the inner court to enter the Archean scripture pavilion at the same time to borrow ancient books. Between the outer court and the inner court, there was an incomparably huge cliff. The primordial scripture pavilion was built in the middle of the cliff, occupying a third of the area. If one didn't look carefully, the Archean scripture pavilion was just an ordinary cliff, and one wouldn't associate it with the number 1 scripture pavilion of the outer world. In the middle of the cliff, there was a door that wasn't very grand. Above the door, there was a plaque with the words Archean Scripture Pavilion written on it. 2 disciples were guarding the door. "Greetings, Inspector Anshi." The 2 disciples hurriedly bowed, and their gazes curiously landed on Zhuowen. "Inspector Anshi, this person isn't a disciple of our Archean Heavenly Tao Academy, right?" One of the disciples guarding the door said awkwardly. "Don't worry. I have already talked to Old Man Shao. He allowed me to bring someone in." "Old Man," Anshi said lightly. The 2 disciples looked at each other and didn't stop him. They naturally knew who Old Man Shao was. He was the deputy pavilion master of the Archean scripture pavilion and had great power. Even the deputy pavilion master had agreed, so how could the 2 of them dare to stop him? Chapter 4508. When the 2 of them entered the primordial scriptures pavilion, Zhuowen immediately felt the tranquil atmosphere in the pavilion. This atmosphere was very strange. No matter how frustrated you were, once you entered the pavilion, your frustrated heart would immediately calm down. The primordial scriptures pavilion was very spacious. There was a public reading area in the center of the first floor, where neatly arranged tables and chairs were placed. At this moment, there were many disciples in outer court attire in the public reading area. They were holding ancient books and reading them attentively. Around the public reading area, there were many elegant wooden doors. Behind each wooden door was a huge bookshelf. The bookshelves were filled with all kinds of ancient books. They flowed with extraordinary light and were colorful. There were also many disciples shuttling between the doors, looking for books that they liked. At the front desk of the first floor, an inconspicuous old man sat cross-legged, meditating. The old man opened his eyes and looked coldly at Zhuowen and Old Man Anshi. He said indifferently, "Anshi, this kid is an outsider after all. He can only stay in the primordial scriptures pavilion for about 2 hours. If you want to choose a book, hurry up." After saying that, the old man ignored Old Man Anshi and Xiao Tianzi. He closed his eyes again and sat on the spot calmly. "Zhuo Xiaoyu, Old Man Xiao's temper is like this. Don't mind him." Old Man Anshi scratched his head and said awkwardly, "It's okay. Senior Anshi, lead the way." Zhuowen said nonchalantly. Next, Zhuowen followed Old Man Anshi up the stairs to the upper level of the primordial scriptures pavilion. The primordial scriptures pavilion was divided into 5 levels. Each level had its own corresponding restrictions. For example, the first level was the lowest level of the primordial scriptures pavilion. As long as one had the Great Qian Kuan Tribulation and was a disciple of the primordial Heavenly Tao Academy, they were qualified to enter the first level. The second level required the cultivation of the cosmic Dharma body, the third level required the ancient starlight, and the fourth level required the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. The fifth level was the most mysterious level of the primordial scriptures pavilion. It required the cultivation of all-in-one to be qualified to enter. In the entire Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy, only a handful of people possessed the qualifications to enter the fifth level. Old Man Anshi was at the early stage of law phenomenon of heaven and earth, so he was qualified to enter the 4th floor. However, his permission to borrow the books was only at the early stage of law phenomenon of heaven and earth. The corresponding earth formation map was naturally at the early stage of the 4th heaven of the eternal realm. The higher one went, the fewer people there were in the ancient scripture pavilion, and the higher the quality of the books. When they arrived at the 4th level, there were only a few people left. Furthermore, all of them were experts at the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth level, and they were all flipping through ancient books on this level. After Zhuowen and Old Man Anshi entered the 4th floor, these people nodded to them and glanced at Zhuowen without saying anything. "Zhuo Xiaoyu, this area is filled with array Dao manuals. You can choose. Remember, you can only choose early stage 4th heavenly layer eternal realm array diagrams. I don't have the authority to take away higher level ones. Old man Anshi pointed to a huge bookshelf on the left and whispered. Zhuowen nodded, strolled to the shelf, and secretly browsed through it. Ancient absolute killing god array, thousand rock supreme thunder god array, explosive flame lifeless god array. Zhuowen browsed through them carefully. His eyes basically fell on the early stage 4th heavenly layer eternal realm array diagrams. The rest were basically ignored. In the end, his gaze landed on a formation map in the corner. This array diagram scroll looked ordinary and even a little shabby. There were traces of fire on the edge of the scroll, and there was a strange charred presence. When old man Anshi saw Zhuowen's eyes fall on the scroll at the edge, his eyes narrowed slightly. Senior Anshi, why is this array diagram nameless? Zhuowen pointed at the scroll on the edge and looked up at Anshi as he asked. Old man Anshi smiled bitterly and said, Zhuo Xiaoyu, you'd better not choose this array diagram. It's the only incomplete array diagram on the 4th floor. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed and he asked curiously, why is an incomplete array diagram on the 4th floor of the Archean Classics Pavilion? Old man Anshi's eyes deepened and he said, because this array diagram was left by one of the 5 ancestors of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. It is said that the complete version of this array diagram is very powerful. Even if it is placed on the 5th floor, it is still one of the top treasures. Speaking of this, old man Anshi's eyes were full of pity and he continued, unfortunately, for some reason, this array diagram is incomplete. Hearing this, Zhuowen's eyes flashed with a trace of horror. Such an incomplete array diagram was qualified to be placed on the 4th floor. It could be seen how powerful the complete version of this array diagram was. Zhuowen thought for a long time and finally made up his mind. Senior Anshi, I choose this array diagram. Zhuowen pointed to the incomplete array diagram and looked at old man Anshi seriously. Old man Anshi's eyes narrowed and he said in a low voice, Zhuo Xiaoyu, don't be impulsive. This incomplete array diagram is too powerful, and its reference value is very low. Why don't you choose another complete array diagram of the early 4th heaven of the eternal realm? Zhuowen shook his head and said firmly, I want this array diagram. The reason why Zhuowen was so determined to choose this incomplete array diagram was that he had extraordinary confidence in the primordial stone. He was confident that with the primordial stone's heaven-defying deduction ability, there was a high probability that it could deduce the incomplete part of the array diagram. He was looking forward to seeing what kind of secrets and power the array diagram left by the ancestors of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy contained. Seeing Zhuowen's determined look, old man Anshi knew that no matter how much he said, the latter might not listen. If you insist on choosing this array diagram, then it's up to you. However, you can choose another array diagram. Old man Anshi said helplessly. Zhuowen looked at old man Anshi in surprise. Don't look at me like that. Although my authority is not high, I have a good relationship with old man Shao. If this incomplete array diagram is added to a complete array diagram of the early 4th heaven of the eternal realm, I think he will agree. Old man Anshi spread out his hands. Zhuowen was quite touched. He knew that old man Anshi had chosen to do this for his own sake. Senior Anshi, thank you. Zhuowen cupped his hands and thanked him sincerely. Old man Anshi smiled and waved his hand. You don't have to be so polite with me. Choose quickly. Zhuowen nodded and did not argue. After picking up the incomplete array diagram, he browsed through the other array diagrams. In the end, he chose the Eon's ultimate divine array. The power of this array was extraordinary. It was considered an extremely powerful offensive array among the killing arrays. Of course, the Eon's ultimate divine array also had a corresponding shortcoming. That was, it concentrated all its power on killing, and its defensive power was very weak. Once the killing array could not kill the enemy quickly, it would be easy for the enemy to escape from the array. After choosing the array diagram, Zhuowen and Old Man Anshi prepared to leave the Archean Scripture Pavilion. Suddenly, 2 figures came up from the stairway to the 4th floor. Hey! It's you! When one of the 2 figures saw Zhuowen, he immediately exclaimed and attracted Zhuowen's attention. When Zhuowen looked at the figure, his eyes narrowed slightly. Chapter 4509. Two figures, one old and one young, were coming towards him. The old man wore a purple-gold brocade robe, and his white hair fluttered slightly. He had a dignified temperament. Beside the old man was a young woman. She was dressed in green, and her skin was whiter than snow. She was extremely beautiful. Lian Rong, you know him? The old man frowned slightly. He glanced at the young woman beside him, and then his eyes fell on Zhuowen, silently sizing him up. Master, he is the Zhuowen I mentioned to you. His talent is extremely powerful. Lian Rong bowed and said respectfully. The old man raised his eyebrows, sizing up Zhuowen's eyes with a hint of interest. The moment old man Anqi saw the old man, his expression suddenly changed and he became uneasy. Anqi greets Saint Master Qing Lian. Old man Anqi hurriedly pulled Zhuowen and bowed respectfully to the old man. At the same time, the other cultivators on the fourth floor also bowed to the old man, and their eyes were blazing with reverence. Zhuowen was moved. He did not expect that the old man with an extraordinary bearing in front of him was actually a Saint Master. In the ancient Heavenly Tao Academy, there were a total of 9 Saint Masters. Each of them had a unique ability to teach and their strength was monstrous. Back then, Lian Rong had mentioned to him that her master was one of the 9 Saint Masters, Saint Master Qing Lian, who was the old man in front of him. No need to be so polite, get up. Saint Master Qing Lian pressed his hands down, indicating that everyone need not be so polite. Then, his gaze fell on Zhuowen, and he said indifferently, "You are Zhuowen?" Zhuowen greets Saint Master. Zhuowen cupped his hands in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Neither arrogant nor rash, neither servile nor overbearing, good. With such a temperament, no wonder Lian Rong often talks about you. But it's a pity. Saint Master Qing Lian first nodded, and after praising Zhuowen, he shook his head. Lian Rong, let's go. After speaking, the Saint Master Green Lotus restrained his expression, brushed past Zhuowen, and headed towards the 5th floor. Zhuowen was a little baffled, completely unable to make sense of Saint Master Qing Lian's words. Zhuo Xiaoyu, you know Saint Master Qing Lian? Old man Anqi looked at Zhuowen in surprise. Zhuowen shook his head and said, I don't know Saint Master Qing Lian, but his disciple, Lian Rong, a few times. She once invited me to join the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. Old man Anqi nodded. No wonder Saint Master Blue Lotus knew Zhuowen's name. After Zhuowen and Elder Anqi left, Saint Master Blue Lotus and Lian Rong stood in front of a bookshelf on the 5th floor of the ancient scripture pavilion. Balls of light floated above the bookshelves. Each ball of light was the highest level of scriptures in the immemorial Heavenly Tao Academy, and included many different categories. Lian Rong absent-mindedly browsed through the light on the bookshelf, but her beautiful eyes looked at Saint Master Qing Lian with a trace of confusion and doubt. Lian Rong, are you puzzled as to why I said it's a pity after I praised Zhuowen? Saint Master Qing Lian's eyes flashed with wisdom as he smiled at the absent-minded Lian Rong. Lian Rong nodded embarrassedly and said, Master, didn't you say that those without Tao roots are mortals in the end, and once someone breaks through this limit, there will be endless possibilities? At this point, Lian Rong hesitated, thought for a moment, and continued, at that time, after I told you about Zhuowen, you said that you would take him as your disciple. Why didn't you do anything just now? Saint Master Qing Lian smiled faintly and said, those without Tao roots do indeed have endless possibilities. But this Zhuowen is different. His direction has been determined, and it's a direction that even I can't see. What? A direction that even you can't see? Lian Rong turned pale with fright. Lian Rong was very clear about her master's ability. Her master could see many things that ordinary cultivators couldn't see, such as the trajectory of fate, the path of cultivation, a person's karmic luck, and so on. This was the innate talent that Saint Master Qing Lian was born with, and this also caused Saint Master Qing Lian to be extremely special among the 9 great Saint Masters. In other words, I really want to take him as my disciple, but I'm very clear that I don't have the qualifications to teach him. So, when I said it's a pity that my ability is insufficient. Saint Master Qing Lian sighed lightly, and the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a gentle smile. Lian Rong was greatly shocked in her heart. She didn't expect that her master would actually say such words. In Lian Rong's eyes, Saint Master Qing Lian was omnipotent. No matter if it was a great devil or a great criminal, they could all be taught to be obedient by him. Now, Saint Master Qing Lian actually admitted that he didn't have the ability to teach Zhuowen. This was indeed too shocking to her. Although I can't see the trajectory of this kid's fate clearly, but I can feel that this kid's future path is extremely extraordinary. Saint Master Qing Lian's eyes flickered with the light of wisdom as he continued, Lian Rong, if it's possible, it's best that you interact with him more. It might be beneficial for your future. Lian Rong looked at Saint Master Qing Lian in surprise. She didn't expect the latter to have such a high evaluation of Zhuowen. Master, could it be that Zhuowen is even more extraordinary than the Nti Shiva? Lian Rong suddenly asked. She remembered that when Sakyamuni first came to the immemorial Heavenly Tao Academy, her master had once exclaimed about Sakyamuni's extraordinary talent. Furthermore, he had also asserted that Sakyamuni's future achievements could be compared to the 5 ancestors who founded the immemorial Heavenly Tao Academy. They were the 5 people who stood at the peak of the 100 outer domains. Their status was unimaginably high. Saint Master Qing Lian actually compared Sakyamuni to the 5 ancestors. It could be seen how high his evaluation of Sakyamuni was. Lian Rong was very curious. Compared to Sakyamuni, how would Zhuowen compare? Saint Master Qing Lian was silent for a moment before he said in a deep voice, I can't say for sure. I can only say that I can grasp a small part of Sakyamuni's fate, but I can't grasp this kid at all. I only know that this kid's future achievements won't be worse than Sakyamuni's, or even better. Lian Rong's pupils constricted, and she was completely silent. Zhuowen, who exactly are you? Lian Rong thought bitterly in her heart. At this moment, Zhuowen, who was being discussed by Saint Master Qing Lian and Lian Rong, followed Elder Anshi back to the mountain peak. Zhuo Xiaoyu, there is a time limit to borrowing the ancient books of the immemorial scriptures pavilion. Generally, it can't exceed 3 months. Elder Anshi said to Zhuowen with some difficulty. Senior Anshi, don't worry. Give me 3 days. After I finish comprehending it, I will return these 2 array diagrams. Zhuowen said confidently. 3 days. Elder Anshi looked at Zhuowen strangely. Although he hadn't studied array Dao, he still knew some common sense. The higher the level of the array diagram, the more complicated it was, and the longer it would take to comprehend it. An array diagram of the early 4th heaven of the Eternal Realm was already considered an extremely complicated high-level array diagram. Even if Zhuowen was an array Dao master at the peak of the 3rd heaven of the Eternal Realm, Elder Anshi still didn't believe that Zhuowen could completely comprehend it in just 3 days. Chapter 45:10. Yes. I only need 3 days. After 3 days, we will set off for the extraterritorial battlefield. Zhuowen said seriously. Seeing Zhuowen's confidence, Old Man Anshi didn't want to refute him, so he nodded in agreement. After entering the room arranged by Old Man Anshi, Zhuowen set up restrictions around the room and sat cross-legged in the middle of the room. First, he took out the Eternal Divine Killing Array. Mu Feng released the primordial stone and began to help him comprehend the array. After comprehending it once, he memorized all the complicated patterns in the Eternal God-Killing Array. Then, he took out the Thunder Source Array and tried to set up the array by simulating it. As Zhuowen continued to familiarize himself with the Thunder Origin Array diagram, he had also developed many functions for it, and the simulation of setting up an array was one of them. Through the Thunder Origin Array diagram, he could simulate and set up all kinds of array formations and restrictions inside. After Zhuowen became proficient in the operation, he would collect the corresponding array materials and start to arrange the array, thus increasing the success rate of the array. Zhuowen set up the Eternal Divine Killing Array again and again in the Thunder Source Array, but he failed again and again. He had to admit that the difficulty of setting up an array at the 4th heaven of the Eternal Realm was really high. Even with the help of the primordial stone, the Thunder Source Array, and so on, the failure rate was still so high. Zhuowen set up the array from early morning until late at night, and finally succeeded in the early morning of the next day. Zhuowen's mind was in the thunder source array. When he saw the terrifying killing array in front of him, his eyes flashed with excitement. After setting up the array day and night, he finally succeeded. When his mind withdrew from the thunder source array, he let out a long sigh of relief, and the corners of his mouth revealed an excited smile. He knew that the model of the eternal divine killing array was left in the thunder source array. He only needed to collect the corresponding materials for the eternal divine killing array, and he could easily set it up. I have most of the materials for the eternal divine killing array, but there are a few main materials, which are really rare. I don't have them on me at the moment. Zhuowen looked at the list of materials for the eternal divine killing array and frowned slightly. It seems that I need to ask Senior Anshi, Zhuowen muttered to himself. He then kept the ancient ultimate killing god array and took out the mysterious incomplete array diagram. This formation diagram had extraordinary origins and was related to one of the founding ancestors of the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy, so its might was definitely extraordinary. I can only rely on the primordial stone. I hope it doesn't disappoint me. Zhuowen stared at the incomplete diagram in his hand. The primordial stone in the depths of his spirit emitted an extremely dazzling purple light. In his spirit, the various details and lines of the map fragment gradually became clear. In an instant, a picture that was exactly the same as the incomplete map was formed in Zhuowen's divine soul. The two primordial stones began to rapidly revolve around the map fragments, and the mysterious purple light became even more intense and exuberant. Zhuowen was very clear that this was the primordial stone releasing its own power to deduce the remaining content of the map fragment. As the purple light continued to flourish, Zhuowen could clearly see that the incomplete map was gradually being repaired. Although the speed was very slow, it was enough to make Zhuowen excited. Time gradually passed. In the blink of an eye, another 2 days had passed. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. In the depths of his eyes, a complicated and shocked light burst forth. I didn't expect that this wasn't an array diagram. Zhuowen muttered to himself, but his eyes became more and more blazing. It's the lifetime experience of the founding ancestor, the experience of a divine array master at the fifth heaven of the eternal realm. At this point, Zhuowen unconsciously took a breath, and the light in his eyes became more and more exuberant. If this incomplete array diagram was not a complete version, at first glance, it would look like an ordinary array diagram. However, once it was assembled, it would no longer be an array diagram, but a divine array master's legacy diagram. My name is Tian Yang, and I have integrated my lifetime of comprehension into this array diagram. If the fated person can decipher this array diagram, then he or she will be able to obtain my lifetime of array Tao inheritance and achieve great enlightenment. A vast and dignified voice faintly sounded from within the inheritance diagram, and it shook Zhuowen's eardrums to the point of exploding. The voice left as quickly as it came. Zhuowen's attention fell on the array diagram in his divine soul again. The content of the legacy diagram was completely hidden, and the array diagram was restored to its original appearance. It seems that if I want to obtain the legacy diagram, I have to decipher the patterns on the surface of the array diagram. Zhuowen smiled bitterly. After all, this was one of the founding ancestors of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. It would not be so easy to leave the legacy diagram to the person who obtained it. He had to go through some tests and tempering before he could finally obtain the legacy diagram. When Zhuowen walked out of the room, he found that Elder Anshi, Duan Jipeng, Li Yinglong, and the others were already waiting outside the door. Zhuo Xiaoyu, you're finally out. If you hadn't come out, I might have forced my way into your room, Elder Anshi joked. Zhuowen glanced at Old Man Anshi, speechless, and then threw the two diagrams to him. I've finished comprehending these two array diagrams. Elder Anshi, you can send someone to return them to the Archean Scripture Pavilion, Zhuowen said lightly. Elder Anshi took the array diagrams, still in a daze. You've finished comprehending them? Old Man Anshi asked rhetorically. Yes. Zhuowen shrugged and replied. Elder Anshi suspiciously handed the 2 array diagrams to the servants and asked them to return them to the Archean scripture pavilion. The passageway to the extraterritorial battlefield has been opened. Let's go, Elder Anshi said. Zhuowen nodded and followed Elder Anshi out of the mountain with Duan Jipeng, Li Yinglong, and the others. The entrance to the extraterritorial battlefield of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy was located in a valley in the outer courtyard of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. This valley was the core of the outer courtyard, and it was heavily guarded. When they entered the valley, they found that there were already several groups of people waiting in front of them. The group at the front was the most conspicuous. They were all wearing the uniform of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. Their uniforms were slightly different from the uniforms of the outer courtyard disciples. Their cuffs and collars were laced with gold, and they looked much more noble than the uniforms of the outer courtyard disciples. They are all inner courtyard disciples, and their talents and strength are much stronger than those of the outer courtyard. Elder Anshi explained to Zhuowen in a timely manner. Zhuowen nodded. The auras of these inner courtyard disciples were extremely powerful, and their eyes were filled with arrogance. Did the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy obtain the remnant map as well? Zhuowen asked in a low voice. Elder Anshi shook his head and said, the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy has a rule that no one is allowed to fight for the remnant map. These inner courtyard disciples must have been given the quotas by other forces. This is also allowed by the Academy. Zhuowen nodded and followed Elder Anshi silently. They stopped at a rock and waited for the passageway to open. Suddenly, the sharp gaze of a handsome young man in the lead of the group of inner court disciples at the front descended onto Zhuowen. His brows furrowed for a moment before they relaxed. He took a step forward and walked toward Zhuowen and the others. The handsome young man's actions immediately attracted the attention of everyone present. Chapter 45:11. The handsome young man finally stopped in front of Zhuowen and the others. His eyes were fixed on Zhuowen from the beginning. He did not even look at Elder Anshi, who was standing beside Zhuowen. He was extremely arrogant. Elder Anshi looked at the handsome young man in front of him and frowned slightly. He was not angry at the young man's rudeness. Instead, there was a hint of fear in his eyes. Your name is Zhuowen, right? The handsome young man looked at Zhuowen up and down. There was an undisguised domineering look in his eyes as he asked indifferently. Do I know you? Zhuowen glanced at the handsome young man and said indifferently. The handsome young man was stunned. Then, he laughed and said, interesting. No wonder that guy pays so much attention to you. You are indeed not ordinary. Unfortunately, you are already as different as clouds and mud. In his eyes, you are just an ant that he can crush at any time. Zhuowen's brows furrowed. This handsome young man was truly baffling. The moment he came over, he spoke such confusing words. However, Zhuowen immediately thought of a person. Sakyamuni. He only knew 3 people from the Archean Heavenly Academy. They were Lianrong, Elder Anshi, and Sakyamuni. It was impossible for Lianrong and Elder Anshi to be here. The only possibility was Sakyamuni. Did Sakyamuni ask you to come here? Zhuowen asked indifferently. The handsome young man was stunned. Then, he laughed loudly. His laughter was full of mockery and disdain. Zhuowen, aren't you overestimating yourself? An ant like you is not worthy of Sakyamuni's attention. I just happened to meet you and wanted to see what kind of person you are that Sakyamuni mentioned occasionally. At this point, the handsome young man shook his head and said disdainfully, now that I look at you, you are really nothing. Are you done? Zhuowen said indifferently. He already understood that the handsome young man in front of him had some relationship with Sakyamuni and was here to cause trouble. Therefore, Zhuowen naturally did not have a good attitude towards this person. The handsome young man could not help but be stunned. He clearly did not expect that the ant in his eyes would actually dare to speak to him in such a manner. If you're done, then scram. You're nagging like a mouse in front of me. Even if you don't find it annoying, I do. Zhuowen looked at the handsome young man with disgust, as if he was looking at an annoying fly. The handsome young man's pupils constricted and the veins on his forehead bulged. He coldly glanced at Zhuowen, and his aura suddenly erupted. It was as if Mount Tai was crashing down, extremely terrifying. "Do you dare to say that again?" The handsome young man said coldly. "All right. Xing Hangshu, Shui Xiaoyu is my friend. Don't go overboard." Old man Anqi frowned and said coldly. The handsome young man named Xing Hangshu glanced at old man Anqi indifferently and slowly withdrew his terrifying aura. He snorted coldly and no longer targeted Zhuowen. Instead, he returned to the front line. However, his cold eyes glanced at Zhuowen from time to time, which made him very uncomfortable. "Senior Anqi, who is this person? He's too arrogant. He doesn't take you seriously at all." Duan Jipeng curled his lips and said unhappily. Old man Anqi said helplessly, "This person's name is Xing Hangshu. He's one of the personal disciples of Master Yuansheng, one of the 9 great sacred masters of the inner yard." Everyone understood. No wonder this young man was not afraid of old man Anqi at all. It turned out that this person was a personal disciple of one of the 9 great sacred masters. Although old man Anqi was much stronger than Xing Hangshu, he was only sent out to patrol after all. His status was actually not much higher than a personal disciple like Xing Hangshu. "This person has a good relationship with Sakyamuni?" Zhuowen frowned slightly and asked. The reason Xing Hangshu had come to talk nonsense to him was all because of Sakyamuni. "You can't say that. Sakyamuni is also a personal disciple of Master Yuansheng. Speaking of which, Xing Hangshu is Sakyamuni's senior brother." At this point, old man Anqi's eyes flickered and he continued, "The Nti Shiva is extremely heaven-defying. It's said that when he became Master Yuansheng's disciple, he taught all of Master Yuansheng's disciples a lesson and taught them a lesson." Zhuowen did not find it strange. Sakyamuni's Dao root was extremely special. Previously, he had fought with Sakyamuni many times and knew that the latter's Dao root should have some sort of evolutionary nature. If this person entered the primordial heavenly Dao Academy, he would definitely be like a tiger that had grown wings. No one would be able to stop him. Zhuowen looked at Xing Hangshu's back and thought to himself, "I wonder if the Nti Shiva will come to the ruins." Suddenly, 2 petite figures walked out slowly from the depths of the valley. Everyone looked over and saw that it was a pair of delicate, porcelain doll-like twin girls. The 2 girls looked exactly the same. The only difference was that their hair color was different. The girl on the left had black hair, while the girl on the right had white hair. Both of them had a strange smile on their faces. "Hello everyone. We are the guardians of the passageway to the extraterritorial battlefield. Before entering the passageway, we need to remind you of some things to take note of." The white-haired girl was the first to speak. Her voice was cold and emotionless. "The passageway is connected to the extraterritorial battlefield. Therefore, many dangerous illusions will appear during the journey. Everyone just needs to stay calm and ignore the illusions. If you attack because of the illusions in the passageway, you will die." The black-haired girl pursed her lips and smiled, but it looked exceptionally strange. Entering the passageway requires 500,000 chaos crystals per person. You can enter the passageway after paying, the white-haired girl continued. Most of the people in the valley knew the rules and handed over the chaos crystals they had prepared to the girls. After keeping all the chaos crystals, the 2 girls came to an altar in front of the valley. Their hands overlapped on the altar, and black and white energy wreaked havoc like angry dragons. Instantly, a terrifying light exploded from the altar, and a black and white pillar of light shot into the sky. The sky of the valley seemed to be pierced through. Then, the wind and clouds changed, and a huge black hole appeared in the sky. It spun continuously as if it was swallowing everything. "Go in." The twin girls withdrew their hands and retreated to the back of the black and white pillar of light. They smiled faintly at the crowd. Xing Hangshu led a group of inner yard disciples and stepped into the black and white pillar of light. Their figures disappeared without a trace. However, before Xing Hangshu left, Zhuowen could clearly feel that the former's cold gaze swept over him. Next, people entered the black and white pillar of light one after another. Before long, it was Zhuowen's group's turn. The moment Zhuowen stepped into the black and white pillar of light, He immediately felt a strong tearing sensation all over his body. Chapter 45:12. It felt as if 4 people were grabbing his 4 limbs and pulling them with all their might, as if they were going to tear his limbs apart. Moreover, the feeling of being torn apart did not only come from his limbs, but also from every part of his body. At the same time, Zhuowen suddenly felt a strong sense of danger in his mind. A sharp gust of wind swept from behind him. Zhuowen could not help but turn around and find a figure strangely appearing behind him, holding a long sword and thrusting it straight at him. Zhuowen snorted and was about to use his divine power to resist. But soon, he remembered the words of the twin girls. He forced himself to stop and watched as the long sword pierced between his eyebrows. The long sword pierced through and did not cause any damage to Zhuowen. It's really an illusion. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows, but his heart was filled with dread. The illusion was too real. He couldn't tell if it was real or fake at all. Zhuowen continued to walk forward and encountered more and more illusions. However, he naturally did not move and was as steady as Mount Tai, completely ignoring these illusions. Soon, he walked out of the passage and appeared in a huge open space. This open space was surrounded by many palaces, which were overflowing with colorful lights. Surrounding the palaces was a vast and boundless blood-red starry sky. This starry sky seemed to be dyed red by blood, which gave people a strange feeling. Is this the extraterritorial battlefield? Zhuowen looked around and saw many cultivators coming and going, all of them with a strong murderous aura. One look and one could tell that these cultivators were all experienced warriors who had come out from mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Yes. Where we are now is the outpost of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. Old Man Anshi and the others gathered around Shuo when as Old Man Anshi explained. Zhuowen nodded. Old Man Anshi had already told him about the outposts of the extraterritorial battlefield. There were a total of 6 outposts in the Outer Realm battlefield. They were set up by the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy and the 5 Invincible Realms to provide services to the cultivators who returned from the Outer Realm battlefield. For example, trading, lodging, eating, drinking, playing, and so on were all provided in the station. As long as you had enough contribution points or chaos gems, you could purchase anything you wanted from the station. Zhuowen, you'd better hide in the outpost and not come out. Otherwise, if you come out, you'll probably be killed by me. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded. Not far away, Xing Hangshu shot a cold glance at Shuo when before he swaggered off. There's something wrong with this guy, Duan Jipeng said unhappily. Zhuowen sneered, not minding it at all. If he really met Xing Hangshu in the foreign battlefield, Zhuowen naturally wouldn't show any mercy. As for Sakyamuni, if he encountered her in the Outer Realm battlefield, then Zhuowen would definitely use all his strength to kill her. Hey! There's a reaction from the map fragment again. Zhuowen suddenly sensed something. He probed the great world with his divine consciousness and found another projection of the map fragment inside. The projection showed the opening time of the Outer Realm battlefield. The Outer Realm battlefield will open in 3 months. Zhuowen whispered to everyone. 3 months. Why didn't the map fragment remind us before? Li Yinglong asked curiously. Maybe it has something to do with entering the Outer Realm battlefield. After all, the Outer Realm battlefield is in the Outer Realm battlefield. The closer the map fragment is to the Outer Realm battlefield, the more information it will give us. Elder Anshi guessed. Zhuowen nodded. He looked at Elder Anshi and said, Elder Anshi, I need the Scales of Chaos, the Void Rainbow Horn, and the Dragonstone Divine Ore. Do you sell them here? These 3 materials were the main materials for the ultimate divine array of eternity. They were the only 3 materials Zhuowen lacked at the moment. As long as he gathered these 3 materials, Zhuowen would be able to set up the ultimate divine array of eternity. Elder Anshi's eyes narrowed as he said, these 3 materials are all top-grade materials. They can only be found by chance. It would be difficult for you to buy them in the outside world, but it's much easier in the Outer Realm battlefield. Where? Zhuowen's eyes lit up as he asked. There's a huge auction house here in the immemorial Heavenly Tao Academy called the Immemorial Auction House. Every once in a while, many precious treasures obtained by cultivators from the outer realm battlefield will be auctioned here. We can go there and try our luck. Elder Anchi looked at Zhuowen and said seriously. Next, Zhuowen followed Elder Anchi to the immemorial auction house. The immemorial auction house was on the west side of the immemorial Heavenly Tao Academy. It stood out among the buildings on the west side. After asking around, they learned that the next large-scale auction would be in 5 days. We'll come back in 5 days. I'll take you to the central divine palace first. Elder Anchi led the way in front and introduced the central divine palace to Zhuowen and the others. The central divine palace was the most important building in the immemorial Heavenly Tao Academy. There were all kinds of rewards and missions. The first thing cultivators did when they returned from killing enemies in the outer realm battlefield was to go to the central divine palace to exchange for the corresponding contribution points. It could be said that the central divine palace was the pillar of the immemorial Heavenly Tao Academy. Many other buildings and businesses relied on the central divine palace to exist. When Zhuowen and the others entered the central divine palace, they were immediately shocked by the bustling scene inside. The central divine palace was huge, but there were even more cultivators. It was almost packed to the brim. At the front of the central divine palace, there was a huge screen that displayed all kinds of missions and rewards. Behind each bounty and mission was the corresponding amount of contribution points awarded. In front of the hall, there were many counters. Each counter was occupied by an extremely beautiful female cultivator. Almost every counter had a long line, and they were all dealing with the corresponding business. Contribution points are very important in the outer realm battlefield. As long as you have enough contribution points, you can survive in the outer realm battlefield for a long time and continue to grow stronger. The most common way to obtain contribution points is to kill enemies. The more enemies you kill, the more contribution points you will get. In addition, there are all kinds of rewards and missions displayed in the hall. You can also obtain contribution points. Also, if you obtain a treasure in the outer realm battlefield, you can exchange it for the corresponding contribution points after measuring its value. Elder Anchi explained the use of contribution points to everyone in detail. Do we also need to use contribution points to bid for the auction in 5 days? Zhuowen asked with a frown. Yes. You can also use chaos gems at the auction, but it's a big loss. Contribution points are the most cost-effective. Elder Anchi said. It's my first time here. I don't have any contribution points. Isn't that a big loss? Zhuowen frowned. Old man Anchi said with a smile, not necessarily. As long as you have something good on you, you can exchange it for contribution points. It doesn't have to be a treasure from the outer realm battlefield. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. Just now, he had entered the wrong line of thought. Old man Anchi's words had completely awakened him. After all, Zhuowen was a divine array master and an alchemy master. He could use array Dao restrictions and pills to exchange for enough contribution points to prepare for the auction in 5 days. Chapter 45:13. Archean Heavenly Tao Academy's extraterritorial battlefield encampment, inside a high-end inn. Zhuowen sat cross-legged in the room, with a huge pill furnace placed in front of him. Streams of divine fire gushed out of his palm and entered the furnace. The entire room was burning with a terrifying temperature, as if it was in a furnace. If Zhuowen hadn't set up a restriction in the room in advance, the terrifying temperature would have spread throughout the entire inn and affected thousands of kilometers away. Clang! Suddenly, Zhuowen opened his eyes, and a ray of divine light burst out from his eyes. He slapped the lid of the furnace with his right palm, and the lid was thrown high, and a lot of brilliance gushed out from the furnace. These brilliances seemed to have spirituality, and quickly fled towards the windows, doors, and other places in the room. However, the moment the brilliance was about to escape, it immediately activated the restriction in the room. Countless array patterns quickly emerged, and like a net-catching fish, caught the brilliance back. The brilliance converged, revealing round pills that exuded spirituality. Phew! The divine pill of the second heavenly layer eternal realm, the big yellow divine pill, has finally been successfully refined. Zhuowen breathed a sigh of relief. His level of alchemy had not improved for a long time, and now he felt a little strained to refine the second heavenly layer Eternal Realm Divine Pill. Since receiving Old Man Anch's advice, Zhuowen was ready to refine the Divine Pill and Divine Array within 5 days, and then exchange them for the corresponding contribution points in the Central Palace. As long as he had enough contribution points, he would naturally not miss out on the materials for the Eternal Deathly Divine Array at the auction. In the next 3 days, Zhuowen tirelessly refined pills and set up arrays, refining nearly 100 bottles of Big Yellow Divine Pill and 10 third Heavenly Layer Eternal Realm Grand Arrays. Creak. Zhuowen opened the door, walked out of the inn, and headed towards the Central Palace. The Central Palace was still crowded with people coming and going. Many cultivators were lined up in a long line, going through various procedures there. When it finally came to Zhuowen's turn, the female cultivator at the counter who received Zhuowen had an extremely impatient look on her face. At the same time, the counters were closing one after another. Apparently, something had happened today, and the Central Palace had to close early. What kind of business? The female cultivator in yellow clothes said coldly without raising her head. Exchange for contribution points, Zhuowen said. What's the exchange? The female cultivator's voice was still stiff. A second sky of Eternal Divine Pill and a third sky of Eternal Divine Array, Zhuowen said calmly. As soon as he said this, the originally impatient female cultivator suddenly raised her head. She first sized up Zhuowen, then sneered, "Your cultivation is so low. How can you have a second Heavenly Layer Eternal Divine Pill and a third Heavenly Layer Eternal Divine Array?" Zhuowen frowned slightly. Were all the female cultivators at the counter of the Central Divine Palace so ill-mannered? You'll know if it's real or fake when you get it appraised. Zhuowen took out a jade bottle and handed it to the female cultivator. The female cultivator took the jade bottle handed over by Zhuowen, opened it casually, glanced at it, and threw it back to Zhuowen. Your divine pill is not shiny enough, full enough, and spirituality is not enough. It's simply a fake. How dare you fool me with this kind of thing? The female cultivator said coldly. Huh? Zhuowen stared at the female cultivator in front of him with cold eyes. The Big Yellow Divine Pill was a second sky of Eternal Divine Pill. Its characteristics were relatively introverted and difficult to appraise. The female cultivator in front of him was obviously an amateur. She didn't see the extraordinariness of the Big Yellow Divine Pill at all. Get lost. The female cultivator saw Zhuowen holding the jade bottle and staring at her coldly, and said rather impolitely, "Call your appraiser out. He can definitely see that the pill in my hand is indeed a second sky of Eternal Divine Pill," Zhuowen said flatly. The female cultivator coldly snickered. "Why do I need an appraiser? I have a certain amount of experience in appraising. Whether or not it's an Eternal Divine Pill, I know for sure." Zhuowen's expression turned ugly. The female cultivator before him was simply too unreasonable. That, customer, can you let me appraise your divine pill?" Suddenly, a female cultivator's soft voice from the counter caught Zhuowen's attention. Zhuowen turned his head to look and found that this female cultivator looked rather pure. When she saw Zhuowen look over, her face flushed red and she didn't dare to look at Zhuowen. "Okay." Zhuowen didn't even think before he handed the jade bottle to the pure female cultivator. The pure female cultivator took over the jade bottle, opened it, and sniffed. Then, she took out a pill and studied it carefully. "Junior sister Qiao Qing, do you not trust me? This person is a liar and you dare to question me. Come and appraise him again." The female cultivator in yellow's eyes were cold. The female cultivator named Qiao Qing immediately turned into a yes man. She nodded and bowed to the female cultivator in yellow. "Senior sister, I just don't think this customer is the type to lie, so." The female cultivator in yellow coldly snickered. "You can't judge a book by its cover. You just got here so of course you don't know. I've met more people than you have and I've met all kinds of people. This person doesn't look like a good person." Qiao Qing didn't argue with the female cultivator in yellow. After she replied, she continued to examine the Big Yellow Divine Pill. Just like the female cultivator in yellow had said, she couldn't tell what was so special about the big yellow divine pill. She glanced at Zhuowen and hesitated for a moment before she said, "Fellow Daoist, why don't I call an appraiser over for you?" "Okay." Zhuowen gave Qiao Qing a long look. His eyes were sharp. Naturally, he could tell that Qiao Qing couldn't appraise the big yellow divine pill. However, this woman was very serious about her work and was willing to call an appraiser for him. This made Zhuowen like her. "Qiao Qing, are you crazy? The owner of the counter is very busy. The counter is about to close. If you go and bother the owner now, you'll get scolded." The female cultivator in yellow was in a bad mood. "It's okay. What if the big yellow divine pill is real?" Qiao Qing smiled and walked into the room behind the counter. "Chimempate, you are a liar who wants to fish in troubled waters. If you had taken your fake big yellow divine pill and left, maybe you wouldn't have made a fool of yourself. But now, it's too late." The female cultivator in yellow taunted. Zhuowen didn't even look at the female cultivator in yellow. This woman was ridiculous. He was too lazy to talk to her. The female cultivator in yellow saw that Zhuowen was ignoring her and became angrier. The words that came out of her mouth were even colder and more sarcastic. In the inner room behind the counter, several black-robed old men were in the midst of a discussion. When Qiao Qing walked in, she caught their attention and they all frowned. "Wu Xing, your new disciple doesn't know the rules. How can she just barge in when we're in the middle of a discussion?" An old man with a red nose glared at the nervous Qiao Qing. Then, he glared at the skinny elder. The skinny elder said helplessly, "Qiao Qing just started working here not long ago. She's old, please forgive her." Then, the skinny elder's gaze landed on Qiao Qing. "Qiao Qing, why are you here?" the skinny elder asked. Qiao Qing nervously lowered her head and didn't dare to look at the skinny elder. She held on to the big yellow divine pill and said, "A customer said he's here to exchange for contribution points. I can't tell if this big yellow divine pill is real or fake, so I wanted to ask you to do it." Chapter 45:14. Big Yellow Divine Pill? The skinny elder was surprised. He eyed the jade bottle in Qiao Qing's hand. "Let me see it." The skinny elder knew his disciple's skill level very well. She may not even be able to identify normal eternal level pills, let alone the big yellow divine pill. The skinny elder opened the jade bottle, poured out a single pill, and studied it. The other elders all gathered around. Qiao Qing's hands were clasped together and her eyes were full of nervousness. "This is indeed the big yellow divine pill. Qiao Qing, you did well." The skinny elder handed the jade bottle back to Qiao Qing and smiled. The counter had its own performance. The more valuable the item, the better the performance. The skinny old man was in charge of a few counters. Most of them were managed by his people. Now that Qiao Qing was able to bring in a Dan that was at the second level of the Eternal Realm, of course, it would help him a lot. Though there were countless powerhouses in the outer space battleground, normal cultivators wouldn't choose to come here if they could find something good. Their first choice was to go to the auction house and sell it. That way, they could get a higher price. If they couldn't sell it, then they would come here. This was why the counter's performance hadn't been very good over the years. Qiao Qing took over the jade bottle and her face turned excited. She didn't think Zhuowen was telling the truth. This Dan wasn't a fake. "Master, that customer is still outside. He said other than the Dan, he also wants to exchange for a third sky of eternal level array." Qiao Qing clenched her fists and said again, "What? A third sky of eternal level array?" The skinny elder could no longer stay calm. His voice rose a few octaves as he stared deadly at Qiao Qing. The red-nosed elder and the others all widened their eyes and stared at Qiao Qing. "Yes, yes." Qiao Qing was startled and said nervously. The skinny elder's breathing quickened. The value of a third sky of eternal level array was much higher than a second sky of eternal level pill. To put it bluntly, it's been a long time since the Central Temple's counter had an item of this level. "Wu Xing, your disciple sure is lucky." The red-nosed elder was a little jealous. The skinny elder named Wu Xing couldn't stop grinning. He humbly said something and impatiently followed Xiao Qing out. The red-nosed elder and the others curiously followed. Currently, Zhuowen was standing in front of the counter. His expression was calm. The female cultivator in yellow continued to watch on and on and on and on and on to taunt Zhuowen. When Wu Xing and the others walked out, the yellow-clothed female cultivator finally stopped and looked at Zhuowen gloatingly. She had already determined that Zhuowen's divine pill was a fake, so she wanted to see Zhuowen make a fool of himself. Dear guest, are you here to exchange for divine pills and great formations? Wu Xing walked up and asked Zhuowen in a very polite tone. Zhuowen said calmly. Wu Xing smiled and took the jade bottle from Xiao Qing. He handed it to Zhuowen. Guest, this is your Dan. I've appraised it and it is indeed the big yellow Dan. I wonder if it's the third sky of eternal level array you were talking about. Zhuowen waved his sleeve lightly and passed a brightly glowing formation disc to Wu Xing. Wu Xing hurriedly took over the array board and his eyes were full of surprise. Though he hadn't appraised it yet, he knew this array board was extraordinary based on the energy it emitted. After taking a closer look, Wu Xing revealed a look of surprise. It's actually the peerless Green Dragon Divine Array, a third sky of eternal realm formation. At this, the red-nosed elder and the others were in an uproar. A third sky of eternal level array. The value of this array was extremely high. Even if it was placed in an auction house, it would sell for a sky-high price. The yellow-clothed female cultivator who had a look of ridicule on her face was completely petrified. How was this possible? She had seen the Dan Zhuowen gave her. It didn't look like an eternal level Dan. How did Master Wu Xing make it sound like a real second sky of eternal level Dan? This man also brought out a third sky of eternal level array. That was impossible. It really is a third sky of eternal level array. The red-nosed elder also walked up to take a look. His eyes were full of envy. Wu Xing's luck is really good. He encountered a third sky of eternal level array. This year's performance will surpass ours. How unlucky. Why didn't this customer register at my disciple's counter? That old man Wu Xing just had to benefit from it. All the appraisers shook their heads and didn't try to hide the disappointment in their eyes. The red-nosed elder walked up to the female cultivator in yellow. When he saw how dumbfounded she was, he patted her shoulder. Disciple, don't be discouraged. This customer chose Xiao Qing. This means Xiao Qing is lucky. If this was the first time he came to your counter, with your appraisal skills, you would have been able to identify it. You wouldn't have to call me out. The red-nosed elder's words were to comfort the female cultivator in yellow and also to comfort himself. I really don't trust her appraisal skills. Zhuowen glared at the female cultivator in yellow and suddenly sneered. The red-nosed elder frowned and looked at Zhuowen in confusion. Customer, there are some things you shouldn't spread rumors about. Do you think I don't know my disciple's abilities? The female cultivator in yellow's face turned even paler. She subtly stepped back a few steps. Oh, if your disciple is very capable, he wouldn't say that my big yellow divine pill is a fake, right? Zhuowen said coldly. The red-nosed old man frowned slightly. He glanced at the pale yellow-clothed female cultivator and then at Zhuowen, who had a mocking expression. His eyes immediately darkened. Dear guest, can you tell me in detail what happened? The red-nosed elder paid his respect to Zhuowen. It's not a big deal. I originally came to your disciple to exchange for contribution points. It's just that Zhuowen spoke slowly and told him everything that happened. After hearing Zhuowen's story, the red-nosed elder trembled in anger. He coldly glared at the female cultivator in yellow. It turned out that this achievement originally belonged to him. But because the female cultivator in yellow was a snob, she gave this opportunity to Wu Xing Master. It's not like what he said. This is his own problem. It has nothing to do with me. The female cultivator in yellow saw that the red-nosed elder's face was turning darker and darker. She panicked and quickly explained. The red-nosed elder wasn't an idiot. From the female cultivator in yellow's attitude, he could tell that she was guilty. Huang Yi, you are not suited to work at the counter. Go back. The red-nosed elder said coldly. The female cultivator in yellow trembled as if she was hit by a heavy blow. She immediately knelt down and begged, "Master, this really has nothing to do with me. This person is slandering me. You are not my disciple anymore." Scram. The red-nosed elder flung the female cultivator's arm away and said coldly. The female cultivator in yellow was completely stunned on the spot. She was in a daze. She regretted it. Why did she miss such a great opportunity because of a moment of impatience? In the end, it led to her ending. Chapter 45:15. Guest, your bottle of big yellow divine pills is of high quality. I won't take advantage of you. How about 1,000 contribution points per bottle? Wu Xing held onto the jade bottle and excitedly said to Zhuowen. The rosy-nosed elder and the others all stared at Wu Xing in shock. The latter's price was even higher than usual. Could it be that the quality of the Dan was really that high? Zhuowen nodded. He had some understanding of contribution points and knew that one contribution point could be exchanged for 10,000 chaos crystals. 1,000 contribution points was equivalent to 10 million chaos crystals. This price was out of Zhuowen's expectations. Then, what is the price of an array at the peak of the third sky of eternity? Zhuowen asked. Wu Xing was silent for a while. I am willing to pay 20,000 contribution points. How about that? The rosy-nosed elder and the others were shocked. Wu Xing's price was 2,000 contribution points higher than the market price. He was far too bold. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He stared at Wu Xing deeply, then, "Thank you, senior." Wu Xing laughed out loud. "You're welcome. After all, I can't be happier that you chose my counter. In the future, if you have any other good items, come find my apprentice, Qiao Qing. She will treat you well." Zhuowen nodded. He waved around his sleeve and instantly, numerous jade bottles appeared on top of the counter. They were densely packed together and one could see everything. "Senior, I have almost 100 bottles of big yellow divine pills. Based on your price, I should be able to exchange them for 100,000 contribution point. At the same time, I have 10 arrays at the peak of the third sky of eternity. They can be exchanged for 200,000 contribution point." Zhuowen said indifferently as he pushed the jade bottle and array in front of Wu Xing. Wu Xing's eyes widened and his face turned green. He didn't think Zhuowen would take out so many pills and arrays at once. The reason why he raised the price was to get Zhuowen to like him. In the future, Zhuowen would be able to find Qiao Qing to exchange for contribution points. Now, Zhuowen took out so many divine pills and grand formations all at once. He was probably going to suffer a loss in the exchange this time. However, Wu Xing did not intend to go back on his word. Instead, he was getting more and more excited. He knew very well that if Zhuowen could take out so many good things at once, it meant that he would have even better things in the future. If he could have such a big long-term customer, his performance would definitely be booming. Good. Here are 300,000 contribution points. Little friend, keep them well. Wu Xing took out a bracelet from his sleeve. He looked at Zhuowen's hands and found that the latter was not wearing the same bracelet. His eyes were filled with doubt. "I just came to the extraterritorial battlefield and didn't have time to buy a contribution point bracelet," Zhuowen explained. Wu Xing had a realization and said to Qiao Qing, "My disciple, go get a bracelet from the storage room." Qiao Qing accepted the order and left in a hurry. Before long, she returned with a bracelet. Wu Xing transferred 300,000 contribution points from his bracelet to this new bracelet and handed it over to Zhuowen. "Little friend, you just need to drip your blood on this bracelet to claim ownership. As long as you're not dead, this bracelet will always be yours." Wu Xing smiled. Zhuowen took over the bracelet and bit his finger. After he dripped his blood on it, he realized that there was a special connection between him and the bracelet. At the same time, he noticed that a bunch of numbers appeared on the bracelet. It was exactly 300,000. This represented the number of contribution points in the bracelet. "Little friend, I wonder what your name is." Wu Xing ordered people to take the pills and arrays back to the storage room. Then, his gaze landed on Zhuowen again and he asked politely, My name is Zhuowen. Zhuowen said softly. Oh, so it's Zhuo Xiaoyu. I am Wu Xing. In the future, Zhuo Xiaoyu, please take care of my business. Wu Xing said politely. Elder Wu, you are too kind. Since you've been so kind, I naturally have to return the favor. In the future, when I want to trade, I will definitely find Ms. Qiao. Zhuowen smiled. The price Wu Xing gave him was very generous. Zhuowen had a good impression of the former. In the future, if he ever wants to trade, his first choice would be Qiao Qing. If there's nothing else, then I will leave now. Zhuowen cupped his hands towards Wu Xing. He did not linger in the central divine hall for long and directly left. Zhuowen stayed at the inn for another 2 days. Then, the auction began. He, Elder Anshi, and the others left the inn and headed to the immemorial auction house. Due to the fame of the auction house was packed with people today. It was extremely lively. So many powerhouses. Duan Jipeng glanced over the crowd outside the auction house and couldn't help but exclaim. Here, he sensed many auras that were no weaker than his own. Some were even more powerful than his. It was obvious that the immemorial auction house was extremely famous. Or else it wouldn't have attracted so many powerhouses. Zhuowen glanced around. Suddenly, he saw a familiar silhouette at the entrance of the immemorial auction house. It was a handsome young man. Behind him was a group of cultivators of similar age. They all wore uniforms from the immemorial Heavenly Academy and were very eye-catching in the crowd. This handsome young man was the one who provoked Zhuowen back at the immemorial Heavenly Academy, Xing Hangshu. Xing Hangshu obviously didn't notice Zhuowen. He was being invited into the auction house by a servant. Young Master Zhuo, look, it's Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao. Suddenly, Li Yinglong's aura changed and he reminded Zhuowen. Zhuowen sensed something and looked up. As expected, not far from the entrance, he saw 2 extraordinary silhouettes. Zhuowen was no stranger to these 2. They were Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao. Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao also noticed Zhuowen. They glanced coldly at Zhuowen before being invited into the auction house. I didn't expect these 2 to come to the immemorial Heavenly Academy's encampment too. Li Yinglong frowned. I'm afraid he followed us here. He's really persistent. Elder Anshi said with a gloomy face. Zhuowen nodded to himself and agreed with Elder Anshi's guess. Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao had a huge grudge against him. They only wanted to kill him. Since they were also in the extraterritorial battlefield, they would naturally follow him to the same encampment to find a good opportunity to kill him. Let's go in too. Zhuowen said softly. As soon as Zhuowen and the others entered the auction house, an enchanting female cultivator came to receive them. With Elder Anshi's relationship, they were barely qualified to sit in the VIP seats. The immemorial auction house was divided into 3 levels of seats. The first was the ordinary seats, which didn't have a private room. The second was the VIP seats, which had their own private rooms. They were located on the 2nd floor of the auction house and had a clear view of the ordinary seats. The third was the VIP seats, which were the rarest. They were located on the highest floor. Not only were they spacious, but the service was also excellent. During the auction, they could look down on everyone from a high vantage point, giving off the feeling of a sovereign overlooking the world. Not long after Zhuowen and Elder Anshi entered the VIP seats, many cultivators entered one after another. About an hour later, a dazzling light suddenly lit up on the high platform in the middle of the auction house, attracting everyone's attention. They all knew that the auction was about to begin. Chapter 45:16. On the high platform, an enchanting woman with a graceful figure and revealing clothes had appeared out of nowhere. Hello everyone. It's time for another exciting auction. I'm your old friend, Qi Yi. The enchanting woman bowed deeply to everyone, revealing 2 snow-white cheeks, causing everyone's souls to be intoxicated, and they couldn't help but fall head over heels. Qi Yi is still as beautiful as ever. If I can get close to her, even if I'm a ghost, I'll still be a romantic. You're dreaming. Qi Yi is a thorny rose. If you don't have enough status and strength, "You're not qualified to touch her." Everyone was discussing spiritedly as they looked at Chi with awe, fascination, and fear. As an auctioneer, Chi was able to stand tall in the immemorial auction house. This showed that her background was definitely not ordinary. "This Chi is really a stunner." In the box, Duan Jipeng couldn't help but sigh. Li Shuo and Li Ying's eyes were wide open as they stared unblinkingly at Chi on the high platform. Their eyes were filled with infatuation. "You two, enough is enough." Li Yinglong's face turned ugly. He slapped Li Ying and Li Shuo's forehead, scaring them so much that they quickly moved their eyes away. Zhuo Wen couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. This Qi's every smile, every frown, and every action were filled with charm that captivated one's soul. Moreover, Qi's charm didn't have the slightest pretense. Instead, it was more like a natural feeling. If one's willpower wasn't strong enough, they would be easily attracted by Qi's temperament and be infatuated. "Now, the auction is about to begin. My friends, please bid more for my sake." Qi blinked his eyes and blew a kiss to the audience, which immediately caused a violent uproar. Qi clapped her hands, and a small pillar rose from the center of the high platform. At the same time, a beautiful maid walked out from the curtain behind the high platform, carrying a tray and leisurely walked over. "This is the purple gold divine crown, a divine artifact of the first heavenly layer of the eternal realm. It can speed up the recovery of divine power and greatly prolong the duration of a cultivator's battle. It has immeasurable benefits for improving a cultivator's battle strength." The tray was placed on a pillar by a maid, and the light gathered on it, revealing a divine crown that was flowing with purple gold brilliance. The starting price is 3,000 contribution points. Each bid must not be lower than 100 contribution point. Qi's eyes were filled with charm as she affectionately looked at the crowd below the stage. Her voice was soft and slightly inciting. 3,100. 3,500. 4,000. As soon as Qi's voice fell, the voices of bids rose and fell, continuously resounding throughout the entire auction house. Of course, those who bid now were basically from the ordinary seats. The cultivators in the VIP seats and the VIP seats were basically silent. They just waited in silence. In the end, the violet gold divine crown was successfully bought by an old man for 7,000 contribution points. After successfully bidding for the item, the old man quietly left under the escort of several experts from the immemorial auction house. In the immemorial auction house, there were too many cases of treasure hunting. In order to put an end to this, the immemorial auction house did a good job in terms of security and protection. Following that, one by one, the auction items came one after another. Under the instigation of Qi Yi, almost every item was auctioned at a high price. The next item is going to be incredible. It's an extremely precious material called the Scale of Chaos. The Scale of Chaos is born from the depths of the chaotic void. It is mysterious and unfathomable, but it contains some kind of powerful law pattern. It is extremely extraordinary. Qi pointed to a palm-sized scale with 7 colors on the pillar and slowly introduced it. It's the Scale of Chaos. This is an extremely rare material used to make many fourth heavenly layer eternal divine artifacts and great arrays. It's actually in this auction house, as expected of the immemorial auction house. In the seats, many cultivators secretly exclaimed and admired the immemorial auction house even more. The Scale of Chaos, the starting price is 5,000 contribution points. Each bid must not be lower than 100 contribution point. Qi said with a faint smile. The competition for the Scale of Chaos was extremely fierce. In an instant, the price soared to 10,000 contribution points, and the speed was getting faster and faster. It was so fast that it caught people off guard. When the price of the Scale of Chaos was pushed to about 13,000 contribution points, the voices of the bidders became much sparser. The price of 13,000 contribution points was already a sky-high price for many of the cultivators present in the ordinary seats. Zhuowen sat in the box. Seeing that the bids had become much sparser, he knew that his opportunity had come, 18,000 contribution point. Zhuowen said slowly and raised the price to 18,000 contribution points in an instant. As soon as these words came out, everyone in the auction house widened their eyes, wondering if Zhuowen was crazy to raise the price by 5,000 contribution points. In an instant, the auction house became silent, and no one bid anymore. The price of 18,000 contribution points had far exceeded the expectations of most people. No one would be stupid enough to buy the scale of chaos at this price. Everyone, is there anyone else who is willing to bid? If not, I will knock 3 times, and this item will belong to the gentleman in the box. With that, Qi began to knock on the bell beside her, and a clear sound rang out. However, her eyes kept glancing at the other VIP seats, and even the VIP seats, obviously waiting for others to continue bidding. In the private room, Zhuowen was not worried at all. The price of 18,000 contribution points was already a little higher than the market price of the scale of chaos. If anyone continued to bid, it would be easy to lose money. 20,000 contribution points. Suddenly, an indifferent voice came from another private room in the VIP seats. The auction house was instantly in an uproar. No one expected that there would still be people bidding at this price. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He looked at the explosion not far away, and his eyes emitted a cold light. 25,000 contribution points. Zhuowen added another 5,000 contribution points in one go, and his eyes coldly stared at the box not far away. 27,000 contribution points. The indifferent voice came from the box again. Another 2,000 contribution points were added, as if the person was toying with Zhuowen. That box should be Xinghangshu's. Old man, aren't she? Whispered to Zhuowen. Zhuowen's eyes burst with coldness. He nodded and said with a slightly angry voice, 32,000 contribution point. In the box not far away, Xinghangshu revealed a smug smile and continued, it seems that this kid is angry out of humiliation. It seems that he is determined to get this item. Continue to increase the price. Raise the price high enough for this kid to suffer a loss. In the box, a young cultivator said hesitantly, Senior Brother Xing, this price is far higher than the market price. If Zhuowen doesn't increase the price, won't we suffer a great loss? Xinghangshu sneered. Didn't you hear Zhuowen's angry voice? Continue to increase the price. After this, we will stop bidding and let this kid get the scale of chaos at 30,000 contribution points. Yes. After the young cultivator finished speaking, he called out a high price of 34,000 contribution points. However, after he called out the price, Zhuowen's box fell silent, and he did not bid for a long time. Ding. Following the crisp sound, Qi said happily, congratulations to the guest in box 5 for winning the scale of chaos at a price of 34,000 contribution points. I have to say that this guest has good taste. As soon as he said that, Xinghangshu and the others in box 5 were completely dumbfounded. They completely did not expect that Zhuowen actually did not bid anymore. This completely did not play by the rules. Chapter 45:17. Bang! Xinghangshu slammed his right hand on the armrest, and the veins on his forehead bulged. Although the scale of chaos was precious, it was just a material. To him, it was of little use. The reason why he was bidding was to drive up the price and make Zhuowen pay a higher price for it. However, he did not expect that Zhuowen would not play by the rules and let him buy the scale of chaos at a price that was far higher than the market price. This guy did it on purpose. Xinghangshu's face darkened. He felt that he had been deceived. This guy is really sinister. He pretended to be angry because he thought he was going to get it. I didn't expect that he was setting us up. The young cultivator who made the bid said indignantly. Xinghangshu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, I'll settle this with him later. I heard that something like that will be auctioned off this time. If we can get it, we'll be rich. The other young cultivators in the private room nodded repeatedly. Their eyes were filled with excitement and desire. In private room number 3, Zhuowen's face was rather gloomy. Although he was determined to get the scale of chaos, he did not want to fall into Xinghangshu's trap. If he fell into the trap this time, he was sure that Xinghangshu would drive up the price when he auctioned off other things. That was not a good thing for Zhuowen. Zhuo Xiaoyu, Are you going to give this material to Xing Hangshu just like that? Elder Anshi looked at Zhuowen in surprise. He knew that the scale of chaos was one of the main materials Zhuowen used to refine the ultimate divine formation of eternity. Zhuowen actually gave it up so easily, which made old man Anshi feel a little strange. Don't worry, Elder Anshi. If it's mine, it can only be mine. A cold light flashed in Zhuowen's eyes. Elder Anshi looked thoughtful and did not say anything else. The auction continued. With a beauty like Qi fanning the flames, the auction was extremely lively. Many cultivators gave Qi a lot of face and offered good prices, causing Qi to chuckle non-stop with a face full of smiles. During this period, Li Yinglong and the others also made a few bids and successfully obtained the items they needed. To Zhuowen's surprise, there was no more movement from Xing Hangshu's private room. He did not deliberately raise the price with Zhuowen. Zhuowen sneered. It seemed that Xing Hangshu was afraid of being tricked by him just now. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so honest. Next up, we'll be auctioning two extremely precious materials. Suddenly, on the high platform, Qi spoke again, attracting Zhuowen's attention. When Zhuowen's gaze fell on the tray in the maid's hands, his eyes suddenly became as sharp as a knife. On the tray, there was a sharp horn shining with 7 colors and a piece of or shining with the shadow of a dragon. Both of these materials were extraordinary. These two materials are the Void Rainbow Horn and the Dragon God Ore. This is a top-notch material, and it's extremely useful no matter if it's refining equipment, alchemy, or setting up formation. Qi threw a coquettish glance at everyone and continued, the starting price is 5,000 point. As long as you can bid for it, both materials will belong to you. As soon as he finished speaking, the auction house suddenly became noisy, and the voices of people bidding rose and fell. Soon, the price of the two materials was pushed to 15,000 points. 20,000 points. Suddenly, Zhuowen's voice sounded out from room number 3 once more. Suddenly, the originally noisy auction house became silent. Everyone's eyes could not help but look at private room number 3, their eyes full of fear. They still remembered that during the auction of the Scale of Chaos, the owner of this private room increased the price by 5,000 points, and then cheated the person in private room number 5. They were afraid that they would be cheated if they bid against this person. In an instant, no one made a bid. In private room number 5, Xing Hangshu's face was gloomy. Although he was very unwilling, when he thought of the lesson just now, he could only grit his teeth and keep quiet. Are there any other guests who want to bid? These are two top-notch materials, and they are worth a higher price. Qi looked at the audience, hoping that someone would continue to bid. However, to her disappointment, the audience was silent, and no one made a bid. She took a deep look at room number 3 and hammered her gavel. In the end, she sold the materials to Zhuowen. Congratulations, young Master Zhuo. Li Yinglong and the others hurriedly congratulated Zhuowen. Brother Zhuo, you're really something. Looks like you scared a lot of people just now. Now that you've made a bid, no one wants to bid against you. Duan Jipeng gave Zhuowen a thumbs up. Zhuowen smiled and looked at Elder Anshi. Elder Anshi, where else can I sell the Scale of Chaos? Now that the Scale of Chaos had fallen into Xing Hangshu's hands, Zhuowen could not get it back in a short time. Unless Xing Hangshu left the station and went to the extraterritorial battlefield, Zhuowen could still snatch it. Elder Anshi thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, I don't know. In the station, only the Archean auction house has the most complete collection of items. If you want to find the Scale of Chaos elsewhere, you'll have to rely on your luck. Hearing that, Zhuowen frowned slightly. It seemed that he had to find a way to snatch the Scale of Chaos from Xing Hangshu. I've got what I want. Let's go. Zhuowen did not plan to stay in the auction house for long. After all, there was nothing he wanted here. Wait. Elder Anshi suddenly called out to Zhuowen. What's wrong? Zhuowen looked back at Elder Anshi. Zhuo Xiaoyu, there's something you don't know. This auction is unusual. It's said that a peerless treasure will be auctioned off at the finale. As he spoke, old man Anshi pointed at the VIP seats above him and said, these seats are for famous figures. Usually, there are very few people in the VIP seats at the auction, but it's almost full today. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard that. How could he not know what Elder Anshi meant? Elder Anshi was looking forward to seeing what the so-called finale treasure was. Oh, then let's wait here and see. Zhuowen revealed a look of interest. To be able to attract so many great figures, it was obvious that the final item of this auction was extraordinary. The auction continued. The later it was, the more precious the items on display were. The VIP seats and VIP seats, which were originally not very competitive, began to be auctioned off one after another. Naturally, the prices were extremely high. The cultivators in the ordinary seats could not get involved at all. They could only watch helplessly and did not dare to bid. When the auction came to an end, Qi's eyes suddenly shone with excitement. Everyone, the finale treasure is about to be auctioned off. I'm sure you've heard that the finale treasure this time is extraordinary, Qi said mysteriously, but it attracted the attention of everyone present. Everyone craned their necks to look forward, craning their necks in anticipation. They were all looking forward to the so-called final treasure. What exactly was it? Under everyone's watchful eyes, the curtain opened and two maidservants came in carrying a black box. The moment the black box was placed on the pillar, the entire air seemed to have frozen. No one said a word. They just stared unblinkingly at the black box on the pillar. Chapter 45:18. Divine Soul Sovereign's latest chapter. The instant the black box was opened, a soft chime slowly resounded throughout the entire auction house. Although the sound of the bell was very soft, it exploded in everyone's ears. It was as if thunder was exploding in their ears. Fat. There were also many cultivators with low cultivation bases present who spat out mouthfuls of blood the moment they heard the sound of the bell. Blood flowed out of their orifices. In box number 3, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed as he stared deeply at the black box on the pillar. After the black box was opened, a palm-sized pitch-black copper bell appeared. Dense veins appeared on the surface of the copper bell. These veins seemed to be alive and were wriggling continuously. It looked extremely strange. Qi, who was originally laughing, became exceptionally serious at this moment. She formed a seal with both hands, and the restriction surrounding the copper bell was immediately activated. After the restriction was activated, the faintly discernible chime of the bell in the auction house also completely disappeared. Everyone, this copper bell is called the Heavenly Ghost Funeral Bell. It contains an extremely terrifying power. Once the bell rings, blood will flow for thousands of miles. Its power is peerless. Qi slowly opened her mouth and pointed at the copper bell on the pillar in her hand as she slowly introduced it. The Heavenly Ghost Funeral Bell is a peak level 8 astral weapon. A customer obtained it by chance in the extraterritorial battlefield. The customer believes that he doesn't have the ability to control this item, so he entrusted us to auction it off. The starting price is 50,000 contribution points, and each increment is 1,000. Qi glanced at the Heavenly Ghost Funeral Bell with some fear, and then loudly announced to the audience. In an instant, the entire audience fell into silence. Everyone stared at the Heavenly Ghost Funeral Bell on the pillar, and their breathing became rapid. Peak rank 8. The might of a peak star weapon was absolutely not something they could imagine. As long as they had the Heavenly Ghost Funeral Bell, their strength would greatly increase. However, the price of 50,000 contribution points repelled most of the cultivators. This price was truly too high. 55,000 contribution points. Suddenly, someone in the VIP seats on the second floor made a bid. It was Xing Hangshu in box number 5. This bid was like a spark that ignited the entire auction house. Everyone in the VIP seats made their bids one after another, continuously pushing the price up. TSK. Peak 8th rank. Peak Star Soldier. No wonder the honored seats were all full. This kind of Star Soldier is something that can only be found by chance. In the third box, Old Man Anshi clicked his tongue in wonder and lamented. Zhuowen looked on coldly. He had no intention of bidding. This was because he knew very well that the Heavenly Ghost Funeral Bell was just too popular. Even if he had close to 300,000 contribution points, he might not be able to buy it. Soon, the price of the heavenly ghost funeral knell was pushed to 100,000 points. 150,000 points. Suddenly, there was finally some movement in the VIP seats. Someone had started to bid, adding 50,000 points right off the bat. The VIP seats that were originally in a heated fight immediately quieted down. Adding 50,000 points in one go? That was way too rich. 200,000. At the VIP seats, another person in a private room also added 50,000 points. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and sighed inwardly, as expected of an important figure in the VIP seats. Even the way he bid was so bold. On the other hand, the VIP seats were completely silent. No matter how rich they were, how could they compare to those big shots in the VIP seats? Sigh. As expected, not only are the experts of the various royal courts from the supreme domains here, even some experts from the invincible domains might have heard the news and come. In the fifth box, Xing Hangshu smiled bitterly. He had completely given up on bidding. Junior brother Shitian sent me a message? Isn't he still in seclusion? Xing Hangshu seemed to have sensed something and took out the communication jade talisman from his waist. He was surprised when he saw that it was a message from Sakyamuni. It's a message from senior brother Shitian? Senior brother Xing, what did senior brother Shitian say? In the box, many young cultivators immediately came over and looked at Xing Hangshu excitedly. Sakyamuni was extremely famous in the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy and had many fanatical followers. These people basically worshipped Sakyamuni, which was why they followed Xing Hangshu. Junior brother Shitian said that the alternate ghost tribe also came to the Archean auction house to bid for the heavenly ghost funeral bell. He wants us to help the alternate ghost tribe obtain the heavenly ghost funeral bell. After that, he'll owe us a favor. Xing Hangshu gave a simple summary of the contents of the communication jade talisman. Everyone was especially excited. So the alternate ghost tribe is here too. Which box are they in? Asked one of the young cultivators. They're in the fifth VIP box, which is above us, said Xing Hangshu. There's no time to lose. Let's go to the fifth VIP box. If we pool together, we should be able to gather 200,000 to 300,000 contribution points. At that time, the alternate ghost tribe will have a high chance of winning the bid for the heavenly ghost funeral bell, someone suggested. Said Xing Hangshu. Xing Hangshu nodded and led the crowd out of VIP box number 5 and into the third floor. When they knocked on the door of the fifth VIP box, it took a long time for someone to open the door. The person who opened the door was a pale-faced child. Who are you? Strangely, the child's voice sounded very old, like the voice of a dying old man. We're from the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. I'm Xing Hangshu. Like Sakyamuni, I'm Yuansheng's personal disciple. Xing Hangshu cupped his fists at the child and said in a deep voice. The child's gaze froze, then he smiled and opened the door of the box. So you're Shitian's fellow disciple. Come in quickly. Xing Hangshu and the others hurriedly entered the box and found that it was pitch black. It emitted a gloomy cold air that made everyone feel uncomfortable. Click. The child snapped his fingers, and the pitch-black box lit up with blue sparks. They were like will-o'-the-wisps that floated in the box. The entire box was suffused with a blue glow. It looked eerie and gloomy. Only then did Xing Hangshu notice that there was only the child in the box. There was no one else. May I know who you are? Xing Hangshu didn't dare to be negligent. He cupped his fists at the child and asked. Since there was only the child in the VIP box, and it was in the VIP box, the child's strength was definitely not weak. One of the 3 kings of the alternate ghost tribe, the Ice Ghost King, Ghost Child. The child sat on a seat by the window and casually introduced himself. Xing Hangshu's pupils shrank. He didn't expect that one of the 3 kings of the alternate ghost tribe would come. The alternate ghost tribe was the second most powerful realm in the transcendent realm. The 3 kings were extremely powerful. The Ice Ghost King's strength was also terrifying. He was already an expert in the late stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. It could be seen that he attached great importance to the heavenly ghost funeral bell. Shitian, that brat, asked you to come, right? The ghost child pointed at the seat beside him, indicating for Xing Hangshu and the others to sit down. Yes. Junior brother Shitian must have asked us to help senior in order to ensure that nothing goes wrong, Xing Hangshu said in a deep voice. The ghost child nodded and continued, how many contribution points can you gather? Xing Hangshu thought for a moment and said, at most 300,000 contribution point. The ghost child's lips curled up. That's enough. If we can successfully obtain the heavenly ghost funeral bell, our alternate ghost tribe will never forget your kindness. Chapter 45:19. Senior Ghost Child, do you know Zhuowen? Xing Hangshu came to the ghost child's side and asked in a low voice. The Ice Ghost King, who was originally indifferent, immediately narrowed his eyes and emitted a cold aura. Nephew Xing, why did you suddenly mention this person? The ghost child said indifferently. Xing Hangshu saw the change in the ghost child's expression and felt a little puzzled. Although he didn't know what grudges Zhuowen and Sakyamuni had, he knew that Sakyamuni didn't like Zhuowen. This was also the reason why he targeted Zhuowen from the beginning. However, from the ghost child's expression, he felt that this Zhuowen should be extraordinary. Even the ghost child seemed to value Zhuowen. Because I met this kid in the extraterritorial battlefield. If junior brother Shitian didn't mention this kid to me, I might not have recognized him. Xing Hangshu smiled. The ghost child said indifferently, he's in the extraterritorial battlefield. Where? Xing Hangshu smiled slightly and said, it's in the primordial auction house, VIP booth number 3. The ghost child slowly narrowed his eyes, and a strong chill spread from the depths of his eyes. He had naturally heard of this kid, Zhuowen. When Sakyamuni was still in the lower realm, this kid was the latter's old enemy and had defeated Sakyamuni. Originally, they didn't care about this kid. So what if he had defeated Sakyamuni? Sakyamuni's Dao root was too special. It could continuously evolve, and he was destined to become one of the strongest experts in the outer realm. And this old enemy from back then would only become an insignificant ant. The ghost child and the other 2 kings of the other ghost clans noticed Zhuowen. They only knew about Zhuowen through the outer realm heavenly ranking. When they found out that Zhuowen was ranked first on the outer realm celestial leaderboard, they wanted to kill him and contacted Sakyamuni about it. However, Sakyamuni was too arrogant and did not place Zhuowen in his eyes at all. He even told them not to look for Zhuowen. At that time, although they felt that Zhuowen's talent was not bad, they did not take it to heart. After all, this child was just a shadow and did not pose any danger to them. Most importantly, they had blind faith in Sakyamuni. Since Sakyamuni didn't care about Zhuowen, they naturally didn't take it to heart. But now, since the ghost child knew that Zhuowen was in the ancient auction house, he couldn't just ignore it. Zhuowen, if you hadn't met me, perhaps I wouldn't have bothered to look for you. Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, I'll just slap you to death. The ghost child thought to himself. He didn't care too much about Zhuowen as if he was an ant. At that moment, the bidding for the heavenly ghost funeral bell in the auction house was getting more and more intense. The bids were getting louder and louder. The price of the heavenly ghost funeral bell had reached a sky-high price of 500,000 contribution points. On the high platform, Chi-Yi's beautiful eyes were sparkling. They were filled with a different kind of brilliance. This time, the auction house had set the standard for the heavenly ghost funeral bell to be auctioned for 500,000 contribution points. Now, she had already reached the standard. Judging from the intensity of the bidding, the price would only go higher. 600,000 contribution points. Suddenly, an old voice came from the 5th VIP seat and instantly increased the price by 100,000 contribution points. The originally heated bidding suddenly quieted down. 600,000 contribution points was a very high price even for the big shots in the VIP seats. Some people had already stopped bidding. They did not have that many contribution points on them. 620,000 contribution point. 630,000 contribution point. However, there were still 2 VIP seats competing with the 5th VIP seat. 700,000 contribution point. The 5th VIP seat made another bid, raising the price to 700,000 contribution points. The 2 VIP seats that were originally bidding immediately fell silent. Chi-Yi was wild with joy. She knew that she had exceeded her quota. She had actually sold the bell for 700,000 contribution points. Are there any other guests who want to bid? This is a rank 8 astral weapon. It's a treasure that can only be encountered by chance. If you miss this chance, you might never see it again. Chi-Yi guided patiently. Her charming eyes swept across the VIP seats in front of her, hoping that someone would continue to bid. Unfortunately, the VIP seats were silent. No one else made another bid. 700,000 contribution points was definitely a sky-high price. Even if someone wanted to buy it, they wouldn't have enough contribution point. Chi-Yi was rather disappointed. She used her small hammer to knock 3 times and finalized the ownership of the Heavenly Ghost funeral bell. Congratulations to the customer in the 5th VIP seat for successfully winning the Heavenly Ghost funeral bell. Please come to the auction house's inner hall to collect your goods later, Chi-Yi said to the 5th VIP seat with a bright smile. After saying that, Chi-Yi bowed deeply to the audience and winked at them. Thank you for your support. Today's auction has been successfully completed. When the next auction begins, I will inform everyone. I hope that everyone will continue to support me. In the VIP room, Zhuowen watched Chi-Yi retreat behind the curtain and left with Elder Anshi and the others. The moment he walked out of the VIP room, Zhuowen seemed to have sensed something. At the stairs of the 3rd floor. There, Xing Hangshu and a group of people were slowly walking down the stairs. Xing Hangshu's cold eyes stared at Zhuowen, making him feel very uncomfortable. Zhuowen didn't pay attention to Xing Hangshu. His gaze fell on a child beside Xing Hangshu. The child looked to be around 7 or 8 years old, but he had an ancient and vicissitude aura. What moved Zhuowen even more was that the aura coming from the child was extremely terrifying. It gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. There was no doubt that the child was stronger than Elder Anshi and Li Yinglong. Perhaps sensing Zhuowen's gaze, the child slowly raised his head. A pair of hawk-like eyes fell on Zhuowen. When their eyes met, Elder Anshi's hand fell on Zhuowen's shoulder and pulled him behind him. Elder Anshi stared at the child solemnly and said, Ice Ghost King, it's been a long time. The child's eyes narrowed slightly. He immediately looked at Elder Anshi and said coldly, So it's Anshi. Indeed, it's been a long time. Why didn't you stay in the Void Yama realm? Why did you come to the extraterritorial battlefield? Elder Anshi smiled faintly. After staying in the same place for so long, I naturally got bored. So I came here to try something new. The child nodded and didn't say anything else. Instead, he led Xing Hangshu, Elder Anshi, and the others past them. From the beginning to the end, the child didn't even look at Zhuowen. However, Zhuowen knew that the child's aura had always been on him, and it was filled with malice. It wasn't until the child and the others were far away that the aura gradually disappeared. Who is this person? What a terrifying aura. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo were pale. Although the child's aura was only directed at Zhuowen, it still affected them. That aura was like Mount Tai, pressing down on them until they couldn't breathe. Chapter 45-20. Li Yinglong's face darkened. He's the ghost child of one of the 3 kings of the alternate ghost tribe, the Ice Ghost King. He's already at the late stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. It's the Ice Ghost King of the alternate ghost tribe. No wonder his aura is so terrifying. He's not any weaker than our King of Hell. Li Ying patted his chest and said fearfully. Zhuowen's eyes darkened. He did not expect to meet the king of the alternate ghost tribe in the auction house. No wonder the Ice Ghost King was so hostile towards him. Elder Anshi looked at Zhuowen and asked, Zhuo Xiaoyu, I saw that the Ice Ghost King was targeting you the moment he arrived. Did you offend him? Zhuowen said indifferently, I have some grudges with Sakyamuni. Elder Anshi was enlightened. So that's why. Sakyamuni was a peerless genius nurtured by the alternate ghost tribe. For the sake of Sakyamuni, the alternate ghost tribe would do anything. Since Zhuowen had some grudges with Sakyamuni, It was equivalent to having some grudges with the entire alternate ghost tribe. Let's go. There are rules in the encampment. No fighting is allowed. We're in the encampment, so the Ice Ghost King won't dare to act recklessly, Elder Archie said indifferently. Zhuowen nodded, but his heart was filled with malice. He knew that the Ice Ghost King had probably come for the ruins. Seemed like the ruins had really attracted a lot of true powerhouses. Once the ruins were opened, there would definitely be a fierce battle between dragons and tigers. Zhuowen felt that his strength was getting weaker. If he wanted to gain the upper hand in the ruins, he had to become stronger as soon as possible. After Zhuowen left the auction house, Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao walked out from another VIP box. I didn't expect that Zhuowen would offend the Ice Ghost King, Xing Hangshu, and the rest. He deserves it. Mi Haomiao sneered. Xu Jieying's eyes flickered. Family head Mi, why don't we work together with the Ice Ghost King? With the strength of the two of us, wanting to kill Zhuowen is probably not that easy. After all, he still has Li Yinglong and Anqi with him. Mi Haomiao was tempted. If Zhuowen was alone, it would be easy for them to kill Zhuowen. Unfortunately, Zhuowen still had Anqi and Li Yinglong by his side. Even if they attacked together, the possibility of killing Zhuowen was very low. However, if he could form a connection with an expert like the Ice Ghost King, killing Zhuowen would not be difficult. After Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao contacted the Ice Ghost King, the group of them met in a nearby inn. You want to work with me? The Ice Ghost King sat on the main seat while Xing Hangshu and the others sat nearby. They all looked at Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao. Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao looked nervous. Xu Jieying looked at the Ice Ghost King and licked her lips. Yes. Family head Mi and I have a huge grudge against Zhuowen. I heard that Lord Ghost Child has a grudge against Zhuowen as well. That's why we want to work with you. The Ice Ghost King said indifferently, do you think I need to work with others to kill Zhuowen? Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao looked at each other, not knowing how to reply. Xin 81 Chinese Network Update Computer // however, if you sincerely want to work with me, I can agree to it. However, you have to show your sincerity. The Ghost Child said indifferently. Xu Jieying's eyes flickered as she cupped her fists. Lord Ghost Child, I wonder if you have heard of the news of the ruins appearing in the demonic corpse cliff of the extraterritorial battlefield? The Ghost Child smiled faintly. Of course, I have. Coincidentally, Nephew Xing obtained a remnant map. You want to say that you have a remnant map as well, right? Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao looked at each other and smiled bitterly. It seemed like the Ice Ghost King already had a remnant map. It was ridiculous for them to use it as a bargaining chip. The sincerity I want is not this. I want the two of you to do something for our deviant ghost tribe. Ghost Child's eyes revealed a trace of craftiness as he said indifferently. Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao quickly nodded and said, as long as Lord Ghost Child agrees to work with us to deal with Zhuowen, we are willing to work with your deviant ghost tribe. The Ghost Child smiled and waved his hand. An illusory contract appeared in front of Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao. A verbal agreement doesn't count. Come, sign the contract with me, the Ghost Child said indifferently. Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao looked at the contract carefully. After confirming that there were no problems, they signed it without hesitation. After the two of them signed, the Ghost Child pulled the contract in front of him and signed his name as well. After keeping the contract, the Ghost Child shook hands with the two of them and said, let's work together happily then. The relic is about to open, and I will work with you to deal with Zhuowen. When the time comes, you will have to keep your promise. Xu Jieying and Mi Haomiao quickly nodded. The only thing on their minds was to get rid of Zhuowen as soon as possible. They did not think about anything else. In the inn where Zhuowen and the others were staying, in a huge room. Zhuowen, Elder Anqi, Duan Jipeng, and the others were all in the room. Brother Duan, you said that you found an inheritance. I wonder what level of expert left it behind. Zhuowen looked at Duan Jipeng and asked solemnly. He needed to increase his strength quickly, so he had to find a way to increase his cultivation level in a short period of time. This method could only be achieved by entering the inheritance of an expert and obtaining the good stuff inside. Duan Jipeng pondered for a moment and said, I didn't investigate it in detail back then. I only knew that the owner of the inheritance was at least a cosmic avatar. At that time, I was in a hurry to leave, so I hurriedly left a mark there and didn't go back. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a bright light as he said, Anyway, there's still some time before the ruins open. Let's go to that inheritance that Brother Duan found first. What do you think? Duan Jipeng nodded and did not object. He also felt that his strength was a little weak. If he entered the demonic corpse cliff rashly, it would be quite dangerous. If you're going to explore the legacy, it's best if you leave secretly, otherwise, it will be very dangerous. Old man Anshi suddenly spoke. His expression became very solemn. Senior Anshi, are you worried about the Ice Ghost King? Zhuowen said. Old man Anshi nodded and continued, the Ice Ghost King came with ill intentions, and he didn't hide his malice towards you. If you swagger away like this, it's hard to avoid being targeted by the Ice Ghost King. With the Ice Ghost King's methods, it should be easy for him to find out if we have left or not. If we leave now, it will indeed be quite dangerous for us. Duan Jipeng said with a frown. I have a divine weapon that can copy the aura and create a doppelganger. Regardless of appearance or aura, it will be exactly the same as the original. The few of you leave quietly, and I will bring your doppelganger with me. Occasionally, we will go out for a stroll. This will greatly dispel the Ice Ghost King's suspicions and buy you some time. As old man Anshi spoke, he took out a furnace that was spewing fire from his sleeve. Zhuowen looked at it. It was the heaven and earth furnace that he had brought back to old man Anshi. He had not expected the heaven and earth furnace to have the ability to create doppelgangers. However, the doppelganger created by the heaven and earth furnace has a time limit. It can only be used for a month, so you must return within a month. Old man Anshi said with a solemn expression. Chapter 45:21. Old man Anshi took out the heaven and earth furnace and formed a seal with both hands. Instantly, terrifying flames erupted from the furnace, enveloping the entire room. Everyone, extract a trace of your aura and put it into the heaven and earth furnace. Looking at Zhuowen and the others, old man Anshi shouted in a low voice. Zhuowen and the others did not dare to be negligent. They extracted a trace of their aura and put it into the heaven and earth furnace. Whoosh! When everyone's auras entered the heaven and earth smelt, the sea of flames in the room was sucked back into the smelt. After about a quarter of an hour, the lid of the heaven and earth furnace opened, and 4 black figures rushed out. The 4 black figures were Zhuowen, Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo. The 4 of them looked almost exactly the same as the original. Even their aura, demeanor, and temperament were the same. Li Yinglong was surprised. Why didn't my doppelganger come out? Old man Anshi was a little embarrassed. Family head Li, your cultivation is too strong. The heaven and earth furnace is only an early stage 4th heaven's eternal realm divine tool. It can't create an avatar of celestial phenomenon of earth. Hearing this, Li Yinglong smiled bitterly. It seemed like he had to stay in the station like old man Anshi. He looked at Li Ying and Li Shuo, and he was still a little worried. The 2 of them were the most talented geniuses of the younger generation of the Shuming family. If they were careless and died, it would be a great loss to the Shuming family. Family head Li, don't worry. With me here, they will be fine. Zhuowen observed Li Yinglong's expression and saw the worry in his eyes. He patted his chest and promised. Young Master Zhuo, I'll have to trouble you. Li Yinglong bowed deeply to Zhuowen and said gratefully. With Zhuowen's words, he felt much more at ease. He knew how powerful Zhuowen was. As long as an avatar of heaven and earth expert did not appear, no one could do anything to him. With Zhuowen's protection, Li Shuo and Li Ying's safety was guaranteed. Come here, I'll change your appearance. Zhuowen called out to Duan Jipeng and the others, then used the primordial grand mist technique to completely change their auras and appearances. With the primordial grand mist technique's miraculous effects, even a lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert would have a hard time seeing through the disguise. Just in case, I'll take my clone and leave the inn first. You guys can leave later. Make sure you're well hidden, got it? Old man Anshi reminded Zhuowen and the others again before leaving the inn with Li Yinglong and his 4 clones. They headed for the central divine hall. After old man Anshi left, some of the spies scattered around the inn also quietly retreated and secretly followed old man Anshi. Those spies who were monitoring us have all left. Zhuowen's divine sense silently spread out. After discovering that those malicious gazes had left, he left the inn with Duan Jipeng and the other 2 and headed towards the entrance of the foreign battlefield. The entrance to the extraterritorial battlefield in the Primeval Heavenly Dao Academy's encampment was located in the northern region of the encampment. There stood a huge blood-red door. This blood-red door was extremely strange. The door frame was supported by some kind of huge white bone. On the surface of the white bone, there was blood and flesh wriggling. A pungent smell of blood assailed their nostrils, making them feel nauseous. On both sides of the blood-red door stood 2 burly armored soldiers. Only a pair of bone-chilling eyes could be seen behind their dark and cold masks. They were staring at the cultivators entering and exiting the blood-red door. When Zhuowen and the others arrived at the blood-red door, they saw a long queue. Many cultivators took out their tokens for the guards to check. Go in. When Zhuowen's group of 4 took out their qualification tokens, a guard merely glanced at them before allowing them to pass. Is this the foreign battlefield? After Zhuowen passed through the blood-red door and entered the blood-red starry sky behind the door, he looked around and realized that the blood-red color in the starry sky was due to the strange blood-red clouds nearby. Translator, Naiwabo Studio Editor, Naiwabo Studio Mobile Phone // // After the other cultivators entered the foreign battlefield, they rushed towards the front of the foreign battlefield without looking back. Soon, they disappeared without a trace. Follow me. The inheritance is some distance away from here. If we go at full speed, it will take about 3 days. After Duan Jipeng finished speaking to Zhuowen and the others, he took the lead and rushed towards the west. The 4 of them didn't rush out for long before they saw a huge battle in front of them. This was a hilly area full of ravines. The hills were not tall, but they rose from the ground like acne on the human skin. They looked extremely ugly. In one of the ravines, 4 figures were fighting fiercely. Among the 4 figures, 1 was a human cultivator, while the other 3 were completely different from the human race. They had 4 limbs like humans, but their bodies were covered in green scales. Their cheeks were more like crocodiles, revealing rows of sharp teeth that glinted coldly. These 3 foreign cultivators were not weak, and they forced the human cultivator into a desperate situation. When Zhuowen and the others approached, the human cultivator had already been completely killed by the 3 foreign cultivators. One of the foreign race cultivators took the human cultivator's command medallion and storage artifact before joining up with the other 2 foreign race cultivators. They looked at Zhuowen's group of 4 with vigilance. Are they the foreign cultivators from other places? Zhuowen looked at the 3 foreign cultivators silently and asked Duan Jipeng with interest. These 3 foreign cultivators did not have a high level of cultivation. They were around the mid-cosmic Dharma stage, but the murderous aura on them was much more terrifying than that of the Nigu Starlight stage cultivators. Clearly, this was the result of years of training in the foreign battlefield. Run. The 3 foreign cultivators could naturally see that Zhuowen's overall strength was much stronger than theirs, and they had the advantage in numbers. If they fought, they had no chance of winning. Want to run? It's not that easy. Zhuowen shook his head and took a step forward, turning into a shadow in the void. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the 3 foreign cultivators. Boom! At the same time, Zhuowen's right fist punched out, smashing directly in front of the foreign cultivator. You're courting death. The foreign cultivator saw that Zhuowen did not even take out a divine weapon and attacked with his bare hands. He laughed coldly and slashed out with the divine sword in his hand. The terrifying sword light swept out like a crescent moon and landed heavily on Zhuowen's fist. But to his horror, the sword light that he had thrown out with all his strength was easily shattered by Zhuowen's fist force. Clang! Zhuowen's fist force was unstoppable. It landed heavily on the foreign cultivator's divine sword and smashed it into pieces. The fist force was like a rainbow. Amidst the countless fragments of the divine sword, it landed on the foreign cultivator's chest and directly penetrated it. Chapter 45-22. Poochie. Blood gushed out like rain. The foreign race cultivator's eyes widened in fear, and he died with his eyes wide open. When Zhuoan finished off the foreign race cultivator, the other two foreign race cultivators retreated in fear. XDW-8, the foreign race cultivator in the lead, was the strongest among the three of them. Now that he was killed so easily, there was no need to mention them. However, not long after the two of them retreated, they encountered Duan Jipeng's group. With Duan Jipeng's strength, he killed the two foreign race cultivators in one move. After finishing off the foreign race cultivators, Duan Jipeng took the qualification tokens and storage divine tools from the three foreign race cultivators. He threw the 3 qualification tokens to Zhuoan, Li Ying, and Li Shuo, and said, "Most of the contribution points in the extraterritorial battlefield come from killing foreign race cultivators. The stronger the foreign race cultivator you kill, the more contribution points they have in their qualification tokens. Then, you can get the contribution points in their tokens." Zhuoan took the token Duan Jipeng threw over and checked it. He found that there were a total of 30,000 contribution points in the token. He didn't argue and put the 30,000 contribution points into his own token. Zhuoan sighed in his heart. No wonder he improved so quickly in the extraterritorial battlefield. Entering the extraterritorial battlefield, one could fight with all kinds of foreign races. Not only could one train their battle experience and strength, but they could also get rich contribution points to exchange for cultivation resources. Under such high-intensity training, it was impossible for one's strength not to become stronger. Of course, the extraterritorial battlefield was also extremely dangerous. While you were hunting others, others were also hunting you. Here, you could be killed by someone stronger than you at any time. Duan Jipeng divided the items of the 3 foreign race cultivators, and the 4 of them set off again. Along the way, they basically buried their heads in rushing. Even if they encountered a battle, they didn't pay attention to it. Of course, some foreign race cultivators treated them as prey. Those who took the initiative to attack them were basically killed. 3 days later, the 4 of them arrived at an area full of ring-shaped mountains. The ring-shaped mountain in this area was tens of thousands of feet tall. Its surroundings were like high walls, and the central part was concave. The inheritance is in the center of this area. There is the largest ring-shaped mountain there. The inheritance is in that ring-shaped mountain. Duan Jipeng stopped at the foot of a mountain, and his gaze became serious and solemn. The 3 of you, that ring-shaped mountain is extremely dangerous. You must be prepared. At that time, I didn't have the confidence to go in, so I just made a mark and left in a hurry. Duan Jipeng solemnly reminded. Zhuoan and the other 2 nodded. Duan Jipeng had already mentioned the dangers of the ring-shaped mountains many times. Suddenly, an ear-piercing buzzing sound came from the horizon. "Look, what's that?" Li Ying raised his head and pointed to the sky. There was a trace of doubt in his voice. Zhuoan looked in the direction Li Ying was pointing at and saw a huge black cloud in the sky. The black cloud was sinking rapidly. To be more precise, it was rushing towards them. When the black cloud gradually approached them, they finally saw the true appearance of the black cloud. It was actually made up of many black insects. These insects looked like beetles, and the iron armor on their backs flowed with strange black lines. Countless insects rushed over without any regard for their lives, forming a huge black cloud that enveloped Zhuowen's group of 4. "Let's go, we can't touch these insects. They specialize in devouring divine power. Once we are entangled, we will be sucked dry by them." Duan Jipeng's eyes revealed a look of horror, and he quickly led everyone to the depths of the ring-shaped mountain belt. He had seen with his own eyes that many cultivators were quickly sucked dry by these insects. Among them were experts at the level of starlight-defying ancient. The 4 of them quickly fled, and the black cloud chased after them, and its speed was getting faster and faster. "It's over," These insects are too fast. Li Shuo looked back and found that the black cloud was less than 100 meters away from them, and the distance was getting closer and closer. Despair rose in his heart. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. He didn't even think about it and took out the chariot. Come up. Zhuowen jumped up and shouted at Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo. Duan Jipeng and the other two had no time to think and jumped on the chariot. At the moment when the black cloud was about to wrap them up, the chariot moved completely and disappeared in the blink of an eye. When the chariot stopped, they had appeared in the deepest part of the ring-shaped mountain belt. There stood a huge ring-shaped mountain with a diameter of 100,000 feet. This ring-shaped mountain was much larger than the other ring-shaped mountains around it. It was incomparably tall, and the whole mountain was filled with an ancient and vicissitudes aura. What was more strange was that the surface of this ring-shaped mountain was densely covered with cracks. If one looked carefully, they would find that there was a certain pattern in these cracks, as if they were some kind of alien language, telling the ancient story of this ring-shaped mountain. Brother Duan, is the inheritance you mentioned in this ring-shaped mountain? Zhuowen jumped down from the chariot, his eyes falling on the huge mountain in front of him, and asked faintly. At this moment, Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo were still in a state of confusion. The speed of the chariot was too fast, and they had not completely reacted until now. When Zhuowen asked again, Duan Jipeng finally reacted. Yes, the inheritance is here. My mark is still here. Duan Jipeng pointed at the handprint on a rock not far away and said with a smile. The inheritance is in this ring-shaped mountain. In other words, we have to enter the central depression of the ring-shaped mountain? Li Ying asked. Yes. Whether there is danger inside or not, in fact, I am not sure. I have not entered before, but I confirmed that there is an inheritance inside. Duan Jipeng said with a wry smile. Let's go in and explore, won't we know? Zhuowen kept the chariot and took the lead, flying up the mountain. This ring-shaped mountain was too high, more than 100,000 feet. Zhuowen and the others spent a lot of time to reach the top of the mountain and enter the central area of the ring-shaped mountain. In the central depression of the ring-shaped mountain, clouds and mist lingered, hazy drizzling, and it felt like an otherworldly paradise. Zhuowen and the others did not dare to be careless. In the process of going in, their nerves were completely tense. When they finally reached the bottom, they did not encounter any danger, and everything seemed very calm and peaceful. At the bottom, there was a vast plain, and the fog was much thinner than above. What are these stone statues for? Li Ying noticed that around the plain, there were stone statues that were dozens of feet tall, and his eyes were full of surprise. These stone statues were very strange. Each of them had a huge head, occupying 2/3 of the entire stone statue, but their bodies were very short. The stone statues had strange smiles on their faces, and their eyes were slightly squinted, as if they were laughing at something. What a strange stone statue. Why does it look a little creepy? Li Shuo muttered to himself, rubbing his arms with a trace of fear in his eyes. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.